Pro football is king. That we all know. But which teams have the edge? Which players will shine this week? That's the information we're all trying to find out. And VSiN's got the answers for you. Now, on Inside the Numbers, get the very best information from VSiN's hosts and special guests on the biggest NFL games of the weekend. The best of VSiN, the Pro Football Edition, right now.
Welcome to Inside the Numbers. I'm Kelly Bidlin. We have just 2 weeks to go in the NFL regular season, and both the action on the field and the action at the sportsbook is heating up. Over the next 2 hours, our VSiN team will get you set with everything you need to know before heading to the betting window this weekend. We start first with a numbers game. Michael Lombardi joins Gil Alexander to discuss who's the true cream of the crop in the NFL and much more.
Let's bring him in. He's a co-host of Betting Across America, when he and JVT were kind enough to have me on this Sunday. It's on Saturday and Sunday mornings here on VSiN at Sirius XM Channel 204. Gridiron Genius is the name of his book. You can see what he or read what he writes over at The Athletic. Got a podcast on The Ringer. What else does he do? So many things. It's Michael Lombardi. Good morning, Michael.
Good morning, Gil. How are you? And I promise not to mention the quarterback from Chicago. I promise not to do that.
Well done. We're going to have to grade that now that you haven't said his name, but you referred to him. We're going to have to go to
I was
going
to take the under, too.
Yeah.
I think I messed up.
Yeah, I shouldn't have alluded that. Michael, so you getting ready for that Saints-Chargers Super Bowl? What do you think?
You know, it's an interesting combination. I mean, when you look at, I just was going through my numbers, doing some research for the weekend, and the two best, first thing I always do every week is go to first half point differential. To me, that tells a powerful story about teams that understand the West Coast offense principles, which is we are going to throw the ball to get the lead, and we will run the ball to keep the lead, and we'll be able to, we want to play from in front, so our defensive coordinators are able to call and blitz and attack the quarterback and create a 10-point lead into a 17-point lead. The two best teams are Chicago and Kansas City, 1-2. Chicago by far at 119 in first half differential. The Chiefs are at 96 and Pittsburgh's at 81. So, typically the upper echelon is reserved for the Patriots, and the fourth team are your Los Angeles Chargers at 64. What's fascinating about this, the Rams and the Patriots are 7th and 8th.
Yeah, I want to start. Well, I was going to start with the Rams. Let me start there because I've joked with you a couple times now, both on this show and on yours. Now, is Cooper Kupp the MVP of the season? By the way, I was watching the Saints last night. And I could say, is Ted Ginn the MVP of the NFL? Also, the Saints offense crashing without him as well. But with the Rams, because I'm going to give the Chiefs a pass here, because I was saying earlier on the show, do you ever remember a season where we had three teams, Rams, Saints, Chiefs, that 3 weeks ago, say week 12-ish, through 12 weeks, we're like, these teams are leaps and bounds the best teams in the NFL. And then in just 3 weeks' time, all of what we thought we knew, we don't know anymore. So the Chiefs get a pass because of Kareem Hunt to some degree. The Saints are still going to get home field. They're going to be just fine. But the Rams, and the Saints, unlike the Rams, and the Chiefs, unlike the Rams, they always look like they're deeply passionate. Even when they're down, they're always in the game. They're always engaged. The Rams, there's no real rash of injuries. Everett on 2 consecutive drives in that game against the Eagles doesn't go out of bounds. Todd Gurley, who took blame for it himself after the game, he didn't go out of bounds. We consider Sean McVay to be this great coach. The one Achilles, the one kryptonite was that he goes away from Gurley sometimes. But shouldn't that be a ding on McVay that those guys didn't know to go out of bounds? They don't get any pressure on Nick Foles. What happened to Donald Sue and company? Isn't Wade Phillips supposed to be this great defensive coordinator? I guess the question is, what is it? It's got to be more than. What is it about the Rams? I guess that's the open-ended question. Why is this team so different than the one we knew 3 weeks ago without any real explanation that's apparent?
Well, I think it's Todd Gurley. I think we saw Gurley get hurt in the Chief game. We don't know how bad he was hurt, but we saw him kind of not miss some of the late part of that game. And since that Chief game, he's carried the ball, which he only carried the ball 12 times. I mean, his rushing attempts since New Orleans, he had 13 carries in New Orleans. He had 16 against Seattle. He had 12 against Kansas City. Detroit, he had 23, won the game for him. And the last 2 weeks, he's combined for 23 at 11 and 12. So, and we know the recipe for the Rams is when he doesn't carry the football over 17 times, they typically lose. And this is what we're seeing. And it's put a lot of pressure on Goff. The other factor is Goff's only thrown the ball for 3 times down the field for 25-plus yards. Can't make any plays down the field. So that play-action pass and all those over routes that they were getting earlier in the season, they can't make them. And Goff is not playing well. His accuracy, he's playing fast. And I've said this about Goff since the day before McVay got there, is when he plays fast, he doesn't play well. And if you look at his numbers the last 3 weeks, well under 7 yards per attempt. He's got 7 interceptions to 1 touchdown. And he's basically averaging, he's under 60% completion. He can't control the football when he has to play fast.
Man, forgive me, Michael, because of course now 2 other questions have sprouted from this one. The first of which has to do with Everett going out of bounds not once but twice in that game. Cam Newton last night, end of the first half, he lets 10 seconds wind down late in the half. His back is to the ball. They have a couple timeouts left. They're trying to matriculate down the field. Like, are these players ever taught football 101? Like, in your experience at the highest level, do these conversations happen with these players? Like, hey, this is what we're trying to do. Maybe keep your head in the game.
I mean, look, it's the age we live in. I mean, it's the millennials, and I think that this celebration, I mean, can you imagine he gets up and he signals first down and he doesn't realize he's on the 2? I mean, at some point you got to have confrontation with the players. Like, at some point you're going to have a hard conversation. And if you want everybody to love you, then coaching's not for you. But typically what happens is that's typically what happens. Everybody doesn't, they'll just glance over it. I mean, you're either coaching it or allowing it to happen. And they're allowing it to happen. You're
either coaching it or you're allowing it to happen. I love that. That's one of my favorite Lombardi-isms. Here's the other thing about that, getting back to the Eagles for a second now. Too short of a sample size now to come to the conclusion that the Eagles, I don't know, maybe the offensive line just plays a little harder for Nick Foles maybe than they do for Carson Wentz. Let me put that another way. If someone from another team, I don't know, let's go with the Jaguars, Michael. Let's say the Jaguars in the offseason they call the Eagles up and they say, hey, see Jalen Ramsey and Leonard Fournette? We'll give them both to you for Carson Wentz. Do you consider this if you're the Eagles?
I don't think I would, because I'm not sure Wentz has been healthy all year. On my podcast with Tate Frazier, every week I've talked about how I don't think Wentz has been healthy. I think his lower body hasn't been well. I think it's been a struggle for him. I think he hasn't been able to drive the ball down the field, and I think that's been a problem. And I think he's been playing through it. He's taken a lot of punishment, he's taken a lot of hits, and he's tried to play through it, and it hasn't helped. And I think that was an effect. And I would never want to do something and trade a player that I really didn't know if he was 100% healthy or not.
Okay, I could buy that. Nice to think about, though. I think just the fact that we even have to think about that now is an interesting thing. I've asked you this question in different ways. We've talked about home road splits. It's my belief that this is the year of the home road split in a bigger way than ever before in the National Football League. I want to ask the same question in a different way. Let's take 5 of these teams that have stark home road splits. None of which will probably make the playoffs. Tennessee is still in it, but they're the one team. They're still on the outside looking in, as is Miami. But if you take Green Bay, Tennessee, Tampa Bay, San Francisco, Miami, and Cleveland, so those 6 teams, all of which are likely, some have already been eliminated, but all of which may all miss the playoffs. Their home record, straight up, Green Bay, Tennessee, Tampa Bay, San Francisco, Miami, and Cleveland, is 28-11-2, straight up at home. 28-11-2. Now, I've asked you this question before, and you said very interestingly that offensive lines don't travel well. It's got to be more than that, Michael. Like this to me is off the charts. There's got to be something else at play if these level teams just destroy at home, and it also means, therefore, that they just get absolutely crushed collectively on the road. What's going on in the NFL that this is getting, that the chasm is widening?
I think it proves that bad lines don't travel. Let's just take the Dallas Cowboys. The Dallas Cowboys today is not a very good line. We have a perception that it is, but it's not. I mean, last week they lose one. They don't. 2 of their starting guards are gone in the game. Martin doesn't start the game. Sefulu, they lose him midway through the game. They end up playing a bunch of guys there. They can't block anybody. Their offensive line is bad. And that's why they're 2-5 on the road. And so when you look at the Carolina Panthers, bad offensive line, doesn't travel well. The Houston Texans have been able to overcome it. They're 5-2 on the road, but they're challenged this week. Bad line, do they travel well to Philadelphia against a good front? That's going to be interesting. And I think a lot of this can get masked when they play against a team that doesn't have a good front. The Miami Dolphins, if you watch the Minnesota-Miami game, that is living proof that bad lines don't travel.
Talking to Michael
and bad quarterbacks, by the way Tannehill held the ball. But the reality here is, if you can't get control of the line of scrimmage because the crowd noise is so loud, you can't hear. It takes away the only advantage the offense has, which is the snap count.
Just seems to be getting worse, Michael. That's the thing. Just seems to be getting worse.
It is getting worse, Gil, because the injuries are taking a toll. It's getting worse because that sixth lineman who's starting now has gotten hurt, and now the eighth lineman is starting, like at Dallas as an example. The depth of your team. I think, look at the Rams. Austin Blythe is starting at right guard. Everybody puts their best rusher against him. Everybody puts their rusher against John Sullivan. And pressure inside has proven to affect Goff. And so when you can match up your good defensive lineman against them, that's the problem. And I think that's what the Bears will be formidable come playoff time, because Hicks will go inside and he'll give people trouble. I think when you look at the Saints, their defensive front, they go inside, they give teams trouble. And I think that's what wins.
Talking to Michael Lombardi, M. Lombardi NFL on Twitter, VSiN host, former NFL executive with many NFL greats, Bill Walsh, Bill Parcells, Bill Belichick. So many questions. Let me start last night, Taysom Hill and the Wildcat. When I'm betting against a team that's playing Wildcat and they gain like 4 or 5 yards rushing, I get really annoyed because it just seems to me that the passes are so rare right out of the Wildcat. How does it gain yardage on the ground? Why aren't 11 defenders, when they see the opposing team in the Wildcat, why are they not just jailbreaking, sprinting through the line? Because they know, by and large, there's not going to be a pass there. It drives me nuts.
Well, they force you to defend the field from a horizontal standpoint, which is difficult. They force you to defend the width of the field and the length of the field. And Taysom can throw the ball. Look, I think this Taysom Hill thing is fascinating because as a bettor, you have to go into the playoff games and you have to understand, you have to research teams that are good on third and short. Because teams that win come playoff time always convert third and short. That's how they keep the ball. That's how they keep the momentum. That's how they keep their team going. That's how they win games. This is what makes the Saints so dangerous. They're really good on third and short. So are the Bears are good on third and short because Trubisky can run with it. And when you have that dynamic, whether you want to use a Wildcat, whether you want to use the Bears quarterback to do it, you can do that, and it becomes a problem. And in playoff time, those third and shorts that you don't convert. Last night, Cam Newton doesn't convert a third and short because they don't want to run them. That's a playoff game last night. He didn't run the ball, therefore they're punting. It's a mistake.
Yeah, I was saying it all night. I was like, look, there's no threat to run, no interest in running this football. Last one before the break. And this is also like just an in-game thing. The whole thing where teams are running the play clock down to 1, doesn't that shift the advantage to the defense and specifically the defensive lineman? Because they know, obviously, the ball's got to be snapped on that play. Shouldn't these teams in those situations, when they're incentivized to run the play clock down, shouldn't they really be doing it at like 3 or 4 seconds? Does that ever get discussed?
Yeah, I mean, look, you got to understand, what you want to do is you want to move the safeties by your count. And you want to get those safeties to start to move and cheat where they're going to go. Because they know they got to get somewhere in a hurry, and they can only hold their disguise so long. And the longer that play, the call's not going to change when you get under 10 seconds. So they're just disguising the coverage. So the longer you go, the more you have an advantage to see where they're going to move to and to be able to figure out the coverage. And I think that's typically what teams do. I think that's what's hurt the Rams a little bit. Teams are just lining up, waiting for that 15-second clock to go off, and then moving their defense so that McVay can't really get a good read on what's actually going on to tell the Goff, hey, man, you got to throw this over out. They're going to be in this coverage. Throw it, and then the button goes off. He's playing quarterback as much as Goff, and I think teams have gotten used to that.
Talking to Michael Lombardi. All right, Michael, one more. I lied. Things come into my head. I don't want to forget them. Eli Manning is basically a corpse out there. Big Ben making horrible mistakes. Drew Brees sort of here late in the season laying eggs, Drew Brees standard-wise. Aaron Rodgers having the worst year of his life. Brady now unbrady-like. And yet, Phillip Rivers is playing the best football of his life. How does this happen, Michael? How amazing is this from Phillip Rivers?
He's unbelievable, and he gets hit, and he gets up, and he laughs.
Yep.
And it's funny.
Never gets hurt.
Up, he laughs. He has no problem with it. He enjoys it, and he moves along. And so, to me, he is truly, he has to be in the MVP conversation. He has to be in the MVP because he is by far the difference maker for what they're doing at the Chargers. Because, Gordon misses, they win. Allen misses, they win. They go on the road. We talk about winning on the road defines who you are. The Saints are 7-1. The Chargers are 6-1 on the road. They can play well away from home. Now, we could also argue that when they play home, they're playing on the road too. But the reality here is they can play. And teams that win on the road, teams that score early in the first half and win on the road, you take those combinations, you got good teams. The Cowboys don't score early, don't play good on the road. I think they're a bad team. Now, they might win the East, but that doesn't make them a good team.
Follow the Money's Mitch and Paul have their favorite prop bets of the week next on Inside the Numbers.
This is Inside the Numbers, the Pro Football Edition, the very best information from VSiN's hosts and guests on this week's biggest pro football games. You can listen to VSiN on SiriusXM Channel 204. Watch us online at vsin.com and follow us on Twitter at VSiN Live.
Well, the best time to bet anything is if the time is right for you at the number that you see up there. Parlays and teasers take a little more explaining, so I would try to get to the window as soon as possible. I wouldn't wait to the end when you're in line and there's 10 people ahead of you, then get to the front and actually go through 3 or 4 or 5 parlays from 6 to 8 teamers. Teaser bets, be a little bit more careful with, only because if you cross key numbers there and you don't utilize it, you're just simply wasting your money. The parlays, like everything else, have been this way since the beginning of time. If you're looking to bet the favorites, you want to bet them early in the week because that's when the line will come out. 80% of the time, the games usually go up near the end of the week. So if you're looking to bet the underdog, I would suggest, this is not every time, but most of the time you'll find a better bargain for your bet at the plus side near the end of the week.
So there's a couple of schools of thought here. The first school of thought is that you're better off not placing a parlay or a teaser altogether and just sticking to singles because that's where the optimal value can be found. But what's the fun in that? We all love to bet parlays and bet teasers. It makes betting more fun, betting more exciting. So the optimal time to be placing a parlay or a teaser is when you see a line that might be a little bit stale or a line that hasn't moved as quickly as it needs to catch up with the market, because that's when you're going to create the optimal value for yourself as a bettor or a punter.
When you look at parlays, sometimes it's hard enough just to pick one winner, let alone multiple winners. But I think if you like favorites, you want to bet early because you're afraid that number might start to go up a little bit. If you're going to bet underdogs, maybe you wait a little bit to see how high that number goes, maybe to create some value. I think you're looking at key numbers, too, if you like a certain team. If it goes beyond 3, maybe you like the underdog. Below 3, maybe you like the favorite. When it comes to teasers, a lot of times you're looking maybe to tease that favorite down, who's, say, a 6 or 7 point favorite, to maybe pick or actually getting a point or two. And if you like an underdog, again, you're looking at some of those key numbers where you could maybe get over that 3, over that 6, over 7, or over any key numbers to kind of create some value. Again, it's hard enough to pick one, but if you like multiple games, I think that's the best approach.
Welcome back to Inside the Numbers, where you get the best insight from VSiN's experts on this weekend's biggest pro football games.
It's time for a little prop culture with Mitch Moss and Paul Howard from Follow the Money.
When the sportsbook isn't enough,
we're competitive. The word bet sets off that competitive nature.
Mitch and Paul go off the board for prop culture.
I said bet money. Harry said bet. Wayne bet. Spank bet. Joey bet. 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 Bet.
Prop culture.
These are good. Creative as well. A lot of NFL in your face. Will Foles be the starting QB for any team for Game 1 of the 2019 regular season? Yes, minus 220. What do you do if you're Philly? I guess you still ride with Wentz. What if this kid wins a couple more games? Does it again? Tough call.
I'm absolutely conflicted on this.
Yeah?
Mm-hmm.
I'd like that. Yeah, minus 220.
And by the way, just look at the injury history here now for Wentz.
Yeah.
It's not just one thing. I mean, that completely sucks. But if this Foles looked pretty good against the Rams on Sunday night. So if this continues, they win a couple of games this week into the playoffs, man.
Where will he play next year? Week 1. Giants the favorite. Jacksonville and the Redskins 4-1. Then Miami. Tampa on the list too. Will Flacco be the starting QB for any team Week 1, 2019? Yes, minus $4.
Yes, he will be.
Yeah. Now, where will he play? Jacksonville, the favorite. Redskins right behind him. Miami, the Raiders, and the Giants.
Okay, so the Dolphins are on every single list here.
Yeah.
Is it a shoo-in that Tannehill's not coming back? They're going to bring somebody in over Ryan Tannehill in Miami?
I don't know about that.
And if the Raiders?
Well, Tampa's on the list, too, on both.
Yeah.
Like, are they walking away from Winston? And we still don't know what the Giants are going to do.
They have a major decision to make there in Tampa. And what about the Raiders? Is it any lock whatsoever that Derek Carr is going to be the guy next year?
Yeah, I guess Gruden went to bat for him here a couple days ago. But Zach Ertz, total receptions on the season, under 110.5. He's got 101. The record for a tight end is 110 by Witten.
Yeah, he had 3 last week. Thanks, pal.
Don't they try to get it to him week 17? Try to break the record?
Should have tried last week.
Well,
the playoffs for fantasy.
Oh, man. Who will have more sacks
Turn into that guy
this year, Mac or the Raiders? Mac has 12.5. The entire Raider defense has 12.
Now give me the plus money with Mac.
Mac's plus 125. How about the butt sack last week? That was great. Total rushing yards for Henry, 78.5. He's got 408 the last 2 games.
That's absurd, by the way. And what,
Wow.
six touchdowns, I believe?
Yeah.
I think he has 11 touchdowns in his last 9 games.
What happened? It's like, let's give him the ball as much as possible.
Well, why did they not do it earlier on in the season, right?
I know. It's been Superman. Well, Chris Boswell missed an extra point. Yes, 4-1. He's missed 7 field goals and 5 extra points this year. Yeah, remember that props up at William Hill every week. It was 4.5 this past week. They put it up every week, miss extra points. Will he miss a field goal or an extra point? Yes, plus 120.
Well, give me the 120.
Yeah. Wasn't even close on that field goal,
No,
right?
I mean, you knew he missed it right away.
Wasn't even close. Oh, that was bad. Playoff props. Steelers, the Cowboys to make the playoffs, please. I mean, it's a huge price. Steelers, 380 to make the playoffs. Vikings, minus 180. Take back plus 140. Titans, plus $1.10. That's not enough. Nah. They're underdogs week 17 at home against the Colts.
They sure are. They're catching 2.5 already over at the Superbook.
Yeah, Colts are plus 150. Ravens are plus 155 to make the playoffs. Yeah, I think they lose Saturday. It's a tough game.
What has to happen for the Colts to get in? The Ravens must lose this Saturday, or do they have to lose out? No, they lose this Saturday.
Just lose once. Ravens lose once, Colts win out.
Yeah.
There it is.
That's going to happen.
I would think so.
They're plus 150, Colts? Yes. Yep. Yeah. They're not going to lose the Titans on the road, are they? The Titans have never beaten Andrew Luck. They got embarrassed earlier this year.
Well, the Eagles make the playoffs. Yes, 2-1. Dolphins are 10-1. Carolina plus 6. That was before the Newton news. 650, please. Redskins plus 450. Come on. 10-point dogs. You're better off parlaying the next 2. There'll be big dogs in Philly.
Yeah, it's true.
And here it is. Your tease. This is good. Total playoff wins for the Patriots this year. Over a half, minus $3. The last time they didn't win at least one playoff game, 2010, when they lost in the divisional round at home to the Jets by 7. I think they were 14-2 that year.
They were, and they beat the Jets on Monday Night Football 45-3 like a month earlier.
Depends what year you want to look at. Is it the season or when the year the games played? Because I know the year before that they were 10-6 and lost to Baltimore at home. They were terrible that year, but still won the division at 10-6. Over a half. What are you going to do? $3. Say they get the 3.
Yes.
You got the Colts coming to town.
It'd be the Colts, maybe the Ravens.
Yeah. Or you get a small chance at Tennessee.
They're not losing to Tennessee at home.
No.
Could the Colts go there and win?
How about if they're the 2 seed? What if this works out and they get the bye? You're hosting Houston, or who knows? You're hosting Houston, maybe you're playing a Pittsburgh or someone like that.
I mean, with this team playing in Foxborough, Gillette Stadium.
Different team at home.
I know it's 2-1 for them not to win a playoff game. And, That's the beauty of this right now, right? Who are they going to get? Who are they going to actually play?
Yeah.
Will
we have an all Los Angeles Super Bowl? 10-1, yes. No. A couple weeks ago, I'd say there's a chance. But where the Rams are playing, now they're going to have to go to New Orleans. They got to get Goff fixed. Get it fixed.
By the way,
hurry.
Who is the public favorite in that game? Not from a betting standpoint, but who's the public rooting for there? Rams or the Chargers? Rams because they're the sexier team on TV to watch?
That would be an interesting Super Bowl, wouldn't it?
I think so, yes.
L.A. against L.A.
They already played?
Yeah. Will any NFC East team get shut out? Yes, 4-1. 2 teams were shut out last week. Will all NFC East teams score touchdowns? Yes, -165.
Yeah, I mean, by the way, that should be -$7. That feels like a Mayweather versus McGregor bet. They're not going to get shut out this week again. That's not going to happen.
No. Will all teams score a touchdown? I don't know about that. I could see the Redskins not scoring a touchdown with Johnson, something like that. Will Marone be the head coach of the Jags? Well, they just shut out the Cowboys. What are the Giants going to do? They couldn't move the ball against the Titans. Will Marone be the head coach next year? Yes, -230. Will Williams be the head coach? Yes, +120. Williams is 4-2. Hugh is 336-1. Unbelievable.
Can I ask you, why would Marone be a much bigger favorite than Greg Williams in Cleveland? Because the thought is going to be he was only the interim from the get-go, and they're going to look outside and bring in somebody new?
Yeah, it's a hot job. You get to coach Mayfield, and it's a talented roster. Not to mention, I think the stuff that happened in New Orleans is going to still haunts them.
I think so, too.
Comes back to bite.
Let me ask you this.
Held against them is what I mean.
Which job is better? Don't scoff. Cleveland or Green Bay?
It's Green Bay because of Rodgers. Still play another 4 or 5 years.
Who's got the better roster?
Cleveland.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. No, I don't think it's close.
I don't think it's close either. Yeah. And you get to work with Mayfield, by the way, who's a rookie this year. There are a lot of I can't believe I'm saying this, but the Browns' job actually is a very positive one to look at.
Total rushing yards for the Ravens Saturday. Over under 170.5. They've rushed for at least 190 in 5 consecutive games. They're the first team to accomplish these numbers since the 76 Steelers. They're playing the game completely different. And how they're using Jackson, the quarterback. I mean, he's running the ball 18 times a game. Design plays. Crazy. He's running more than he's passing. This is wild what they're doing.
Now,
it's working. They're 4-1, and the only loss was in overtime at Kansas City.
But is it going to work against truly a good team?
I think they can run the ball.
For 170 plus?
I don't know about that. I've been a little disappointed in that defense, too. I know it was Mahomes, but Driscoll moved the ball on them. They got stops when they needed to.
That was a bad spot, though, for the Chiefs.
Mixon had a couple big runs against them. Yeah. They got a ferocious pass rush. I was very impressed with their performance at Seattle. They were all over Wilson. But I wouldn't be surprised if they ran the ball.
Is this the game?
And had success on the ground.
Do the Chargers lose this game?
Yeah.
Or are they different? Is the 2018 version of the Chargers really different than the one that we've known over the last 12 years?
I'd be surprised if they get the 1 seed. And that's because I can't get past the history. Even they'd have to win in Denver, Week 17. Don't laugh. I mean, this is what this team does.
Yeah, no.
They lose these close games and invent new ways to lose. They look great. And they're doing it with all these injuries, but I got to hold it against them. I called it with Cincinnati. I said they would screw around. They needed to stop a 2-point conversion to beat that team. They're terrible. But I know it was a bad spot.
It was a really, really bad spot.
They won at Pittsburgh. They won at Kansas City. They also were down 14 late. But when healthy, and they're the most balanced team in the league, but I just can't get past their history. I still would be shocked if we're sitting here in January talking about, okay, the 1 seed. The Super Bowl goes through that 28,000-seat soccer stadium.
God, I would love that story. That would be fantastic. The NFL. And they host...
Doesn't hold anybody. What's the get-in price? Corporate spectacle. Rich and connected are only there. No home field advantage. All of it. Yeah.
Imagine what StubHub... Is it still StubHub? Or I thought they changed the name recently, actually. Whatever it's called now. Imagine that place hosting the Steelers' AFC title game.
Oh.
It would be like 20,000 Pittsburgh fans to the remaining Chargers fans in there, right? I mean, no doubt about it. The Steelers would overtake.
I don't know.
Everybody else there.
Yeah, I know. It's Ted DiBiase. Everyone's got a price, but then it becomes a thing to do. And that's what LA is all about. It's an event city. It's like, okay, we're the AFC title game. the winner goes to the Super Bowl. Then I think you'd see the locals and entertainment people forking out the money. Place to be.
Yeah.
No?
No, I think it's going to
You'd be all Steeler fans, you think?
I think it's going to be majority Steeler fans, yeah.
Well, I'd say more Steeler fans than Charger fans, but then I think you'd see no doubt, but I think that you'd see people coming out of the woodwork.
You know what? Here's one for you. If that's the actual game that we get, AFC title game, I bet you right now we will get reports out of LA that week that they're going to be practicing against pumped up noise. Juiced in noise. They will be. Yep, to get ready for the Steelers fans.
What a nightmare for the league. I can't say it enough. What a nightmare.
It's so dumb.
You wanted
in LA.
Yeah, you had to get the LA market, right? Nothing but Eagle fans against one of the hottest teams in the league, trying to get the 1 seed. And they played a road game already against the Packers. Okay, you wanted it. You wanted it. That's what the Chargers are doing most home games as well.
Yep. Where are you at with that Pats prop, by the way? A half.
I don't want to lay the
to win one game.
$3. No, no, can't do it. I know it'd be a home game, but still. I don't think they can. The Colts would give them fits.
I like the Colts a lot. Can they go to New England and win, though? That's my only thing.
They've had Luck's number.
Yeah, they have. Yep.
But I don't want to lay through. I guess what's the line? 6? Are they 6, 7? Are they more than 7?
I don't know. No, I think they're
6.
I think 6 tops. Yeah.
They got issues.
They do.
When we come back on Inside the Numbers, Mitch and Paul discuss some NFL futures and much more.
This is Inside the Numbers, the Pro Football Edition, the very best information from VSiN's hosts and guests on this week's biggest pro football games. You can listen to VSiN on SiriusXM Channel 204. Watch us online at vsin.com and follow us on Twitter at VSiN Live.
If you didn't catch VSiN last week, here's some of what you missed.
That's why the National Football League goes out of their way to try and keep everybody informed as much as they possibly can. For example, go back to the NBA. Go back to that final game, that 7th game. LeBron James, did he have a broken hand? A hand was injured, and we didn't. You just must protect yourself. I'm talking about your credibility. You want us to pay you for integrity? How about you tell us when a dude's injured or not going to play? How about the fact that you don't have to go to the arena to find out who's going to be playing goalie tonight for the Golden Knights? I'm just saying.
Within that year and a half for the end of the promotion, my wife and I, between us, had 30 million American Airlines miles, which made us both platinum for life.
Oh my God!
And
oh my God!
And we could. We took some trips. We sold them. We did various things.
Do you think that's something that anyone can develop, Alan, or are you particularly talented in that?
That's what I just said. He's not listening that close. I just said it. That's what I said. Anyone that's an amateur handicapper, pick the sport you follow the closest, you know the most about, and wing it. It's extremely difficult because oftentimes your gut is telling you something you can't verbalize.
Your first reaction there was to say, "Oh, you're not paying attention." I am paying attention. I'm paying attention to every word you're saying, and that's why I came back with exactly what I was talking about. Because then you eventually got to what I was getting at, which is that's extremely tough.
Before Thursday Night Football, Patrick Mahomes minus 155, Drew Brees plus 135, Phillip Rivers 25-1. After last night's game, Brees is minus 137, Mahomes plus 137, and Rivers is 12-1. Is that an overreaction off what happened on Thursday night? I mean, who do you feel like is the favorite to win MVP? Is it Brees? Is it Mahomes? And do you think Rivers has a real shot?
I think it's a way overreaction, Matt. I still don't think it'll be Rivers. I still think it probably will be either Mahomes or Brees.
Welcome back to Inside the Numbers, where you get the best insight from VSiN's experts on this weekend's biggest pro football games.
This week on Inside the Numbers, pro bettor Mark Lawrence joined Mitch and Paul to discuss the Week 16 slate of games.
Follow the money, Paulie and Mitch. Mark Lawrence, our guest. Follow him on Twitter. How do you handicap? What's your philosophy for Week 16 and 17 in the NFL? There's actually great opportunities of great value because it's already priced into the line with these teams in a must-win. They can grab the dog because everyone, especially the public, wow, they need the game. I'm going to lay the points. You can get great value on the dog. What say you?
Well, I know this, guys. In my database, Week 15 is a pivotal week, probably the most pivotal of all weeks in the NFL, especially for teams that are sitting at 500 on the bubble. They're either going to make a push or a surge to make the playoffs or at least finish the season with a 500 record. But when they're favored, they choke like dogs in these games here. 7-7 teams, Game 15 favorite, 20-55 against the spread. That's a choke number, big-time choke number. That'll apply to the Philadelphia Eagles. We'll talk about that game in just a bit.
Okay, what do you think Saturday night? Chargers off the big win, going for 2 at Kansas City. Now they get the Ravens. Ravens need it for playoff positioning. Chargers also trying to get the 1 seed. Gordon's back for the Chargers.
A matchup of 2 top 10 ranked defenses. That makes for nice playoff atmosphere type football, and we're going to see that in this football game. The Ravens reclaimed their number 1 spot in overall total team defense in the National Football League, and they're legit guys, this defense. They've held 5 opponents to season-low yards this year. 2 of the last 3 games have been season-low efforts by the defense, and you have to like the job that they've done with Lamar Jackson. They've won 4 of their 5 football games. The only loss was overtime at Kansas City. They're averaging 223 rushing yards a game with Jackson behind the helm. You've got the Chargers in here now. They just clinched a playoff berth with that big win at Kansas City, that dramatic playoff win. They're just 1-6 straight up, 0-6-1 to the number after they upset Kansas City here. They're at home in a non-division sandwich off a division win. They got a division game up next, this being a non-division game. I'm going to play Baltimore plus the points here.
All right, you mentioned it. Eagles off a straight-up win. They were catching 14 Sunday night. Now they're favored at home against the Texans.
Well, that 14 points was the largest, as we've talked about before, of any defending Super Bowl champion taking that many points in the football game. They win the game here. Defending Super Bowl champions that are home favorites off a straight-up underdog win. The last 6 times it's happened, they've only won 1 football game straight up. They're 1-5 straight up and 0-6 to the spread as home favorites. That's laying points at home and winning only 1 game straight up. I talked about the pressure of being a 7-7 team in Game 15 that applies here to Philadelphia in this game. We saw the Eagles rally around Nick Foles in his start off the bench, the former starter off the bench, the backup. We oftentimes see teams regress in the second game going backwards. Foles in his career, just 2-4 to the number in games off a straight-up underdog win. In Houston, you've got the number 2 seed in the AFC who is 1 game up over New England for the bye. They cannot afford a loss. If they lose and tie with New England will own the tiebreaker here. This will be all out for Houston in this football game. The last 2 games of the football season here. They've got some holes. They've been out-yarded each of the last 3 games, but I think Houston steps up in this game. I like them to take down the Eagles.
All right. Follow the money. Sirius XM 204, Fubo TV, Mark Lawrence, our guest. A couple more here in the NFL. All right, so the Steelers off that huge win at home. They had to have it against the Patriots. They got it. They gave it their all. And they have to now go on the road against the Saints in New Orleans. Short week for the Saints, Drew Brees. The offense looks like they're missing something. They won, did not get the cover, but the defense has been spectacular. It opened up 6.5, now down to 5.5 at a lot of spots in this game.
I think we're going to see a lot of Antonio Brown from the Pittsburgh Steelers the next 2 weeks, guys, here. He's kind of been laying low in the weeds. This offense has been a little bit erratic this season here, but I think the push goes on and starts in this football game. You're talking about Ben Roethlisberger, outstanding in December. We've talked about his numbers before in the past. As a dog in December, he's 7-3 straight up and 7-2-1 to the number. You've got Pittsburgh with the better offense and the better defense coming into this game. This New Orleans offense has completely disappeared. It's like they're in the Federal Witness Protection Program. What happened to the offense with this football team? They're averaging just 283 yards a game in the last 4 games. Only 166 yards a game passing in the football game. They've been outstanding at home, and when they have a winning record against non-division teams with a winning record, they're 15-1 straight up. But I like Pittsburgh in this football game here. I think New Orleans is coasting to the finish line here. Pittsburgh got their foot to the pedal here. I think that momentum of beating New England serves them well in this game.
All right, the Sunday night game's fantastic on paper. Great matchup. Chiefs off the loss. They need it. Seattle blew it. They had a chance to wrap up a playoff spot and lost in overtime to San Francisco. But you have great numbers on Carroll at home off a loss.
Yeah, Pete Carroll's been outstanding in his career off a loss. They're making this big playoff push as well. But when he's been at home with Seattle, he's 11-0 straight up, 9-1-1 to the spread when he's off a straight up favorite loss, which he comes into in this game after blowing as a favorite at Frisco last week. You've got Russell Wilson, patented dog in the National Football League as a quarterback. None better as a dog than Russell Wilson. At home, 5-1 to the spread in his career. The Seahawks are one game up on Philly and Washington for the wild card spot in the playoffs. You're going to get Seattle's best game in this football contest. The Chiefs, we've talked about this before, after that big Rams-Chiefs Monday night thrill in Manila football game, they've been really regressing here. They're 0-3 to the spread since then. And the biggest hole they bring into this game is their rush defense, guys. They allow 5.0 yards a rush. And I think coming off of that devastating loss to San Diego in the last football game, I think it's going to continue the losing side for Kansas City. I like Seattle in the small upset here.
Excellent spot as always. Follow him on Twitter at Mark Lawrence. Mark, if we don't talk to you next week, happy holidays, Merry Christmas, and have a terrific bowl season, okay?
Hey, Merry Christmas to you guys as well. Be good and enjoy the game.
National Football League here. Some global props that you can find, odds for the next NFL head coach to be fired. This is interesting because how do you actually grade this? Ron Rivera is the favorite at 2-1. Todd Bowles 3-1. Steve Wilkes 3-1 as well.
Well, you got to be fired.
No, I'm saying this.
And then
if no coach is fired between now and Black Monday, right?
First guy whacked Monday morning, right?
But you go by Twitter feeds then. Because what's the official announcement? Is it Adam Schefter on Twitter saying, well, I got news for you. Vance Joseph out at Denver on Black Monday. And that comes in 3 minutes before Todd Bowles gets fired?
Okay, that's fair.
Or is it before? Do you have to go?
Does the team have to announce it?
Yeah, is it exactly right? You have to wait for the team to say something to grade it out.
That's what's tricky about global. Globally, they can make up their own rules, and there's nothing you can do.
Odds to win the NFL Coach of the Year right now, Matt Nagy's even money.
Well, what do you think is going to happen?
To get fired?
Bowles is going to be gone. Wilkes is foregone conclusion. Cutter's got to be gone. Joseph, we know.
Has to.
I don't know why. Some of these guys should have been fired already. Marone's in trouble. Well, Lewis is Rasputin. But this, I also think it depends what happens the final 2 weeks. Rivera loses 8 in a row to end the season. Oh, man.
Well, he's the favorite right now, 2-1 to get whacked.
Yeah, but, if they close with a 2-game winning streak, maybe that's good enough because he's had success at Carolina. Bowles hasn't. We know he's gone, and we know Wilkes is gone, and Joseph. So that's why I'm not convinced Rivera's out. I wouldn't be surprised, but I know about these other guys. See, I know Cutter's a goner. I know Joseph's gone. I know Wilkes is gone, and Bowles.
I'm not going to be.
I want to see if a guy's whacked before week 17 or right after the game ends. That happens anytime.
They announce it Sunday afternoon at 2:30.
Yeah.
So there's 7 guys on this list right now that you can bet. I'm not going to be surprised if all 7 get fired. Not.
Was McCarthy on the list last time we did this? Right after the Arizona game? All right, get out.
He was on the list, actually. Yeah, you could bet that. Mm-hmm. Okay, so Coach of the Year, Matt Nagy's even. Is he going to win it? Does he have it wrapped up?
I would think so. Yeah.
I think Anthony Lynn's going to get some votes, plus 475. McVay's on the
probably it's like the MVP. Depends where they finish.
Mm-hmm. You can bet on odds to make the playoffs. Vikings minus 160. Titans minus 110. Colts plus 180. They're huge favorites this week, and they're also big favorites. Well, not big favorites, but they're 2.5 at Tennessee. Do you like the Colts to get in over the Ravens?
Yeah, based on schedule, yeah.
I think Colts win out.
Titans don't scare me. Yeah, I would say the Colts win out the way they're playing, and I don't have a lot. The Ravens have to go as I die here on the air. Nurse, as they go at L.A. to take on the Chargers, and you're right, that's a tough game against Cleveland at home.
I like the Colts plus 180 to get in. And
the Vikings were big losers Sunday night with that Ram loss. Because all they needed was one win in the final 2 games. Now Philly could win out.
Sure.
And they'd have the tie break. Well, it doesn't matter because they have the tie. Even they won at Philly earlier in the season. But now maybe Minnesota has to win both games. 8-7. Yeah, might have to win both. 8-7-1 might not get it done now if Philly can win out. Can't believe that.
When we come back on Inside the Numbers, it's a football free-for-all on a numbers game.
This is Inside the Numbers, the Pro Football Edition, the very best information from VSiN's hosts and guests on this week's biggest pro football games. You can listen to VSiN on SiriusXM Channel 204. Watch us online at VSiN.com and follow us on Twitter at VSiN Live.
It definitely is harder to handicap a mismatch. I mean, you think about a team like an Alabama playing the Citadel or a team like that. I mean, what's the difference between 39 and 49 points at the end of the day? Whereas a team that's a lot closer, it's going to come down many times, more than not, to a last-second drive. So those games that are those huge mismatches where it could be anywhere between 30 and 45 or even more points become much more difficult to handicap.
I think when you're handicapping games, I think it's much harder to handicap a mismatch in college football when you've got a smaller school against one of the top major programs, because you don't know what's going to happen many times in the second half. You can have a number up that you think is well, but look at Alabama sometimes. They rest a lot of their players in the second half of a game, or other teams may do the same thing, or you get that big lead and they're just running the ball or not, I shouldn't say not playing as hard, but they just change the intensity because they're up by so many points and they're running a lot of players in and out. I think it's much more difficult from our side of the counter to handicap a mismatch than a competitive game.
I think it's much harder handicapping a college football mismatch. It's tough to tell if the better team is going to be motivated to play that game, and you get big point spreads, and there's always that backdoor cover. Are they going to blow them out the whole game, or are they going to take it easy because they're looking at the next week? We're a competitive game. Both teams are going into it wanting to win, playing tough. So for me, it's much easier to set a line for a competitive game.
Yeah, mismatch games are always difficult to determine. And a good example of this is the Ohio State Big Ten championship game against Northwestern. Normally a 14-point spread here, you'd say would favor the underdog. They're more likely to come through the back door than normal. But in a game like this, where Ohio State's going for style points in this game, trying to run up the score, trying to impress the committee, maybe sneak into the playoff, we certainly have to consider these outside factors when we make numbers in games like this that are mismatches. And we have them in a lot of championship games, so we're getting to see them right away this week, not just the bowls, but the conference championship games as well.
Welcome back to Inside the Numbers, where you get the best insight from VSiN's experts on this weekend's biggest pro football games.
This week on a football free-for-all, Gil Alexander and company discuss some NFL futures with some serious value.
Privileged to have Warren Sharp on the phone at Sharp Football on Twitter. Great Twitter follow. And Bill Krackomberger in studio at Bill Crackman with the K on Twitter. Bill, you and I were sort of talking about the futures market here in the NFL. And in just the last few days, I've been saying this where I'm like, do you ever remember a season where we had three teams that we considered to be leaps and head and shoulders above everybody else, which is the Saints, the Rams, and the Chiefs. The Rams and Chiefs obviously played that epic game on in prime time, 54-51. And literally like the day after that, I'm like, is this the game that changes football, right? Like these three teams, clearly two of those three are going to be in the Super Bowl. And all it took was like 2 weeks, and now it's a complete crapshoot. The futures market is it's been a very strange NFL season in that regard. And we always talk about, I know you do, I do as well, that the futures market pre-flop, before a season starts, there's like no value in it. This is one of these strange times where there might actually be some value, even though it's probably not the best betting vehicle ultimately.
Right. That's what I was saying between the breaks there. It's amazing this year that who would think in Week 16 you can get the Patriots now. I just looked at like 8 different spots. You can get 10-1 on the Patriots to win the Super Bowl.
The New England Patriots.
I think it's worth a bet, and I usually don't like to bet this kind of futures market because of the hold. There's, historically 20-25% hold on these, so you're better off actually betting the money line. Let's see, the favorite here is I'm seeing New Orleans Saints at 3-1. I'm looking at Pinnacle. So instead of just taking 3-1, you're better off betting $100 on the Saints first round. Of course, second round, same thing. You take your profit, which is a smaller profit, and the 100, and parlay it again, and then do it again. So that will have a ROI, a return on investment, bigger than betting the futures market. However, this year could be different. I mean, I'm looking. There's no clear cut except for maybe, I guess, the Saints is the favorite, but you have Kansas City Chiefs 7-1, Chargers 5.5-1. When do you ever get these type of odds? And then you have the Bears is still a shot at 15-1. I think that's a good price on the Bears.
Yeah, Saints are an exception because despite how poorly they've played 5 out of the last 6 halves, they'll still have home field, and so they will only have 3 postseason games ultimately. Assuming they have home field.
Yep.
But
the Rams 5.5-1. I mean, there's no clear that I think everyone really thought the Saints were going to be the powerhouse team until that Thursday night game where Dallas beat them as a 7.5-point dog. So this year is wide open. It's amazing. It really is. I think there may be some in this futures market. There may be some pretty good little value here, I think.
I have been saying it about the Chargers for a few weeks now, even before their surge here now to be in a tie with the Chiefs, that I thought that's where the value is. And maybe when all said and done, the Chargers end up with home field. The Chargers might be the one team in the NFL then, strangely, that where home field might mean the least to, because I don't know how much of a home field advantage. They might just perform as well on the road as they do at home. Which brings us to the subject of home road splits besides a team like the Chargers, which I've been harping on this year, how the chasm in home road splits in the NFL this year has been wider than ever before. Warren, you had this, I don't know if you had even heard me talking about this, but I was thrilled to see that you had this graph, or this graphic, I should say, that had to do with home and away passing splits this year through week 15. It's going to be too small for folks to glean on a screen, but what were the big takeaways for you from that study?
Yeah, and actually, I will share that I turned this into an interactive visualization that I'll update every single week when I update the Sharp Football Stats website. So people can find this up at sharpfootballstats.com and they can navigate it themselves. You can also filter by down and by half of the game and a few different other variables so that you can kind of pick and choose what you want to look at here. But you're absolutely right. I agree with you. The home road splits have been pretty stark. The one quarterback who really seems to do well on the road has been Patrick Mahomes in terms of his production. Again, you have to keep in mind that there is a sample size issue here. Like we're dealing with an NFL that we've only seen each of the teams play 14 games, and so half of those are going to be at home and half on the road at this point, so about 7-7. So it's not a huge sample size, but you have to work with what you're dealt, and so you want to study some of these things. The other thing is Drew Brees, very good at home, much worse on the road, but still if you consider what the league averages are, he's about league average on the road in many of the categories or slightly above. He's just been so much better at home, and the Saints have been on the road for, I think, 3 consecutive weeks, finally returning home. So that's another big one. But a lot of these guys, from these marquee teams that we're talking about here, the L.A. Rams, the Phillip Rivers have been very good on the road, but the L.A. Rams, the New Orleans Saints, some of those teams, very different home road splits. So it is something to consider when you're looking at the futures market for these teams that are, some of the better teams. You would think they've got better quarterbacks and that they would be better on the road, or at least easier, not quite as a drop-off home versus road. But you're absolutely right. Even in a place like L.A., where the Rams don't really have that much of a home field advantage. I mean, Drew Brees obviously does, but the Rams don't really have that great of a home field advantage out of the Coliseum, but there's very stark home road splits for Jared Goff.
The other thing, of course, that has been a theme, and again, we harped on this last segment as well, and this is really the difference between this year and other years. Just the in-game coaching and the just brain farts of players. We talked about with the Rams earlier not getting out of bounds in that primetime game against the Eagles. But the other night, Cam Newton, this is the Monday night game between the Panthers and the Saints. Saints end up winning it 12-9, speaking of the Saints. But there's the sequence at the end of the first half, Warren, where, the Panthers are driving. I believe they have 2 timeouts at this point, and they're under a minute, and Cam Newton runs the ball, short little run, first down, and with about 34 seconds left in the game, that's when he gets tackled. And instead of immediately using one of those timeouts as the Panthers jockey for either a field goal or a touchdown, trying to obviously maximize that drive, he's with his histrionics, right? The first down sign, as you've said, I think before anybody, the greatest front runner there ever has been, Cam Newton. He's posturing, he's talking to opponents, 10, 11 seconds run off the clock. And you're just like, again, I've been using the word a lot. Incredulous is the word that keeps coming up. You're watching this, you're like, how can this be? And I look over at Ron Rivera, then they flash Ron Rivera, Warren. That was the part that killed me, where he's like, yeah, oh well, feel 11 seconds. Well, that's just Cam being Cam. That's what his facial expression is saying. Does this just drive you mad? Like, I cannot believe this happens with veterans.
Yeah, well, with Cam, that is sort of comes with the territory, right? Like, as we've been discussing before, and you mentioned, he is the biggest front runner that I've seen in a quarterback position, where if you rattle him early, he's very unlikely to bounce back. If you get pressure on him, you sack him, you take him out of his game. If he starts, getting first down runs and plowing over a defender and completing some nice passes early in the game and gets some dancing in, gets to hand the ball in the end zone to one of the fans behind the end zone, then he's probably going to be in a very good place mentally. I think he's improved slightly, but he's still had, these issues. And that was a great example where it was like there was a hard first down to get. He got the first down, and he wanted to kind of show off to the defense, look what I just did. Meanwhile, the time is your biggest enemy. The clock is your biggest enemy at that point, and he's wasting so much of it. If I was the coach, I would have called the timeout right away, knowing what Cam's tendencies are. And in addition, you have those timeouts, you're calling a quarterback run, and it's not as if he's just sneaking for a yard and everybody's standing right there. He goes pretty far down the field eventually. You've got to call that timeout right then and there. So I blame some of it on Ron Rivera and some of it on Cam Newton, but it definitely cost them because we saw the same type of thing happen in Seattle a couple of weeks ago when they played Minnesota on Monday Night Football, and they're taking so much time. And I just hate the concept of let's drain the clock at the end of the first half so we prevent the other team from scoring. Because what you need to focus on is actually scoring yourself. And so if the other team has a little bit of time, then it is what it is. Had Drew Brees been good in that game in the first half to score points? No, he hadn't done anything. The other week was Kirk Cousins doing well and scoring points in that game that you really had to worry that they would march down the field very quickly? No, he wasn't. So score a touchdown. Ensure that you have enough time. And what ended up happening in both situations is there was very little time to work with, and the quarterbacks felt pressured to throw and score touchdowns. And they both of them, Russell Wilson and Cam Newton, each threw interceptions, costly interceptions there, because they felt like they only had one or two shots to make something happen, as opposed to if they had a lot more time, they could have just thrown the ball away and lived to play another down.
It's obviously Cam Newton not playing anymore, shut down. The shoulder is not working for him. That's for sure. We saw that clear as day or clear as night the other night against the Saints. But certainly no excuse for that behavior at the end of the first half. So the Panthers now without him and Heineke in, Taylor Heineke, your starter, 3.5-point dogs hosting the Falcons in what is now mathematically Carolina alive, but really a meaningless game.
Maybe too big of a line move, though. This line opened up 3. It's moved 7 points.
7 points.
There's actually a 4 here in town, and it's an overreaction sometimes, too. This game opened up, like I said, 7-point move because of a quarterback. That I don't know if there's a single quarterback worth 7 points. I mean, that's.
And I will tell you, I will jump in, Crack.
Yeah.
That this coaching staff is very high on Taylor Heineke. They're very high on him, and some of the players have come out and said that the defense has been talking to them in the games, and they knew the defense knows Cam Newton's shoulder was injured, that he couldn't throw the ball down the field. And so they didn't respect any of the routes that were being run down the field. Heineke's the guy that they would bring in to throw the deep Hail Marys when Cam, the last couple of weeks when Cam couldn't do it. So Heineke does have the arm strength to complete some of those passes down the field. This passing game will open up a little bit with him in there. So just wanted to throw that out on the table as well.
And what a town we live in. Look! I'm looking at the screen right now. This is the greatest opportunities for people to bet football in the world when you have a line service or something, and they're free. You can look at the lines for free. There's a 3 at stations and a 4 at the coast. I mean, that's unbelievable. It's very rare to see something like that, but I mean, either side you're on. These are key numbers. Obviously 3, right. 7, 10, 4. These are the key numbers in the NFL. So it's kind of interesting. I'm just noticing
3 at stations, 4 at coast.
Unbelievable. That's just crazy.
Let the stampede begin.
Yeah.
There are a couple of quarterbacks, of course, right? So like the starkest one that could have happened this week, Rodgers versus Kaiser. DeShone Kizer. Rodgers deciding to play for the Packers, so it remains Packers -3. Had that been DeShone Kizer, that certainly flips at least 7 the other way.
You wonder what happens in what happens in the quarterback's head when they're out. A good team like the previously playoff team like Green Bay. You wonder what goes on through his head. I got to go out there and play the Jets. I'm not even playing for nothing. You wonder what the mental side of the game is. The real mental side. What is their real internal feelings?
The truth
now, granted,
serum.
there is though player incentives to get some money, but I don't think at his level. What's $100,000 or $50,000? But there is some incentives. I just read this how the Giants had individual incentivized achievements because they stepped it up after they were virtually eliminated. And they kind of stepped up certain players there, and they actually came out and they beat the Bears. They played really good. They destroyed Washington.
It's okay.
We're
okay with it.
You wonder what gets them up to play, but if you don't have that individual achievement clause in your contract, you wonder what gets them going.
Yeah.
So
look, truth serum. There's got to be a little bit in their head of just don't get hurt here before the off season.
Am I right?
I think
they had to think. Let me.
They're humans, right?
They're humans.
Just don't. You can't play that way, right? Football's not a sport where you play that way, but there's got to be a little bit just let me get to the off season without a jacked up leg.
Yeah, for sure.
1 hour down, 1 to go on Inside the Numbers. After a quick halftime break, it's the Westgate Superbook's John Murray with static lines for this week's Super Contest.
This is Inside the Numbers, the Pro Football Edition, the very best information from VSiN's hosts and guests on this week's biggest pro football games. You can listen to VSiN on SiriusXM Channel 204. Watch us online at vsin.com and follow us on Twitter at VSiN Live.
If you didn't catch VSiN last week, here's some of what you missed.
Once again, like I said, I think Clemson peaked a little, and I think that's really something you have to look at, and I'm sure we'll talk about it a little more when we get to the NFL. But when's your team peaking? You haven't played their best ball. And I think Clemson played their best ball earlier in the season, where Notre Dame's been pretty good throughout the whole season. I saw Mike Kelly got named Coach of the Year. Probably deserved. But he's a pretty good coach, and I think he'll have him hanging in there. And like I said, if I need the dog in that game, I certainly could live with that. Got no problem with that.
Can't believe you have a red shirt on.
Well, that was not caused by me. We were sitting there for a couple hours, and then all of a sudden they said, Jimmy, we want to get another shot with a different color shirt. I said, well, they said, could you go back and get yourself a shirt? I said, I don't have any. He said, what do you mean? I said, I don't have. The only shirts that I have are these white sweatshirts, whatever. They couldn't believe it. And I said, well, this is it. I said, well, listen, hold on. I went back to the gift shop in the South Point. I bought that red pullover shirt for whatever reason.
That's a great story.
This guy, Hall of Fame, let's just not even debate this anymore. He never gets hurt. He's never had an offensive lineman of any repute in all his years. He shot puts the ball to wherever. That pass to Travis Benjamin on that 4th and 7 conversion on that final drive.
Oh my God.
I said earlier, you could have frozen the frame when he dropped back to pass, allowed Phillip, so everybody else is frozen, right? We'll just do this bizarro exercise. Phillip Rivers could have walked up to Benjamin, placed the ball in his hands, and walked back behind the line of scrimmage. He couldn't have done it any better.
And that's the throw I'm talking about that Trubisky can't make.
Saying a guy's worth a point is different than how things play out, and the scheme of the game totally changes when you. Let's say you take Tyreek Hill off the field tonight.
Yeah, he's only worth a half point.
He's worth a half point,
and Hunt's worth a point.
Right.
But the offense is completely different.
Completely different. So yeah, I think some people don't quite realize what the difference is between a point to the line and the difference it can play in the entire game. You take Tyreek Hill off the field tonight, I'd be all over the Chargers.
You'd be taking the money line, too.
Yeah.
You'd be taking the money line price.
I played it relatively small bet, but I took 3.5 with the Chargers.
Welcome back to Inside the Numbers, where you get the best insight from VSiN's experts on this weekend's biggest pro football games.
Every Wednesday, the Westgate Superbook releases lines for the most famous football betting contest in the country. Just like he does each and every week, the Superbook's John Murray joined my guys in the desert to go over the static lines for this week's games.
We begin at the Superbook. This is Wednesday. We want to get the static lines for Week 16, the Super Contest and the Super Contest Gold. So we welcome in a director from the Westgate Superbook, Mr. John Murray. John, how are you, lad?
Brent, I'm doing good. How are you today, sir?
You're looking rested and ready to go here, and we'll roll some. And again, I have to believe, John, you guys are very happy to hear the news before, not after you set the line. Cam Newton not going, and Aaron Rodgers probably going. I know that you were glad to hear that earlier today.
Yeah, it makes it much easier for us here. We got some clarity on both of those quarterback situations, and we were able to make the numbers pretty easily.
All right, John, let's go to Sunday. We've got the Buccaneers going in to play the Cowboys. And last week, the Cowboys, they were shut out in Indianapolis. That's right, completely shut out. Now they go back home. What are you making this one, Cowboys-Buccaneers?
We're using 7.5 on the Cowboys here, and I think the Colts got Dallas's attention. They don't officially have the division wrapped up yet. They can wrap it up on Sunday by beating Tampa Bay. Made them a 7.5-point favorite in this game.
All right, New England limps home, having lost 2 in a row on the road, Miami and Pittsburgh. But they catch a very beatable team, the Buffalo Bills. Patriots and the Bills, John.
New England a 13-point favorite here, and the Patriots have a lot of work to do if they want one of those first-round buys. And they're going to need a first-round bye if they have any hope of getting to the Super Bowl.
Vinny, your thought about these two early games on Sunday?
Well, the Cowboys, I agree with John. The fact that they were shut out last week, Brent, the Buccaneers out of it, and the Cowboys with a wake-up call. So 7.5, certainly that they're going to be a very popular selection this week. And the Patriots, when was the last time they lost 3 games in a row? It's been quite some time. Especially, and it really hasn't happened much during the Tom Brady era. So they're going to be a very popular pick. So I can understand the higher number there than the 12.5 that's on most of the boards right now at 13.
Okay, now this next game was off the board as we awaited word about Cam Newton, and he clearly was laboring throwing the ball. Somebody said he's an upper body thrower. Get out of here. Anybody who ever watched Cam Newton at Auburn and earlier in his career, the Panthers, know that there's something wrong with that shoulder. And, John, what did you make the Falcons with Matt Ryan against the Panthers without Cam Newton?
Atlanta, a 3.5-point road favorite here, guys. It's all because Cam Newton is out. I think Carolina is making the right decision, and I don't understand why Green Bay isn't doing the same thing.
You know, I agree with you, John, completely, and my feeling is that ownership stepped in here. Now, remember, this is a new regime. Coach Rivera, in the aftermath of their loss and even as late as yesterday, had said that he expected Cam Newton to go. I believe ownership stepped in and said, no, wait a minute. We can't get to the playoffs one way or the other. We got to rest that shoulder to see if we can get him healthy for next season. Now, we'll see if Rivera survives this ownership. But again, these are the static lines, Week 16, Super Contest. Falcons on the road, 3.5-point favorite over the Panthers. John, how about the Jaguars, the lowly Jaguars, a team that Amal and I both thought would be a factor in the AFC, how wrong we were, and now they go down to play the Miami Dolphins. What did you do with this one?
Miami, a 4-point favorite at home against Jacksonville on Sunday in the Super Contest. The Dolphins have been a completely different team at home versus on the road. They have several good home wins this year. They have been dreadful away from Miami.
And Amal, will the Jaguars just throw up the white flag here and the Dolphins have it any way they want at home?
I think so. John's right. This team is 6-1 at home this year. They've been outstanding. But, Brent, I disagree with you on one thing. Jacksonville has definitely been one of the top 16 teams in the AFC this year.
When he said that, I said, now where's he going with this? Okay, I agree with you, my friend. Okay, let's go back to the New York Giants on the road. They go down to play the red-hot Indianapolis Colts for the Super Contest. John, what do we have?
Colts minus 9.5 at home. You know, the Colts, with the exception of that one hiccup in Jacksonville a few weeks ago, have been outstanding now for 2 months. And the Colts really have a good chance of getting into the AFC playoffs, where I think they could be very dangerous, guys.
Yeah, Vinny, I completely agree with John on this one.
I do too, because they're getting healthier, Brent, and they're playing good defense as well. I mean, that hiccup at Jacksonville was where it was a very controversial call at the end of that game, where the Colts actually were trying to go in to win the game. But listen, the Giants. You talk about teams that are struggling, and I don't want to say mailed it in. Where are they going right now? Right? You get this is purely an incentive play if you're going with the Colts here.
Okay. The Texans are in Philadelphia to play the Eagles, who came off the mat last week in Los Angeles. John, what do we have?
Yeah, Philadelphia suddenly is alive again in the NFC playoff race, and we've got them as a 2.5-point favorite at home against Houston. Houston right now, if the season ended today, would have a bye in the first round of the AFC playoffs. So it's really a critical game for both teams, Brent.
You know, it's interesting, Amal, because the Texans, they just have not received much respect this season. All they've been doing is winning football games.
You're absolutely right. A lot of times I get on Vinny sometimes in hockey when they don't respect the Buffalo Sabres, but I'm with these guys right now with the Houston Texans. I don't know about you, John, but to me, I'm not quite the believer in this team. I know Indianapolis is a little bit behind in the standings compared to them. We're not going to catch them, but I don't necessarily see them as being a class team in the AFC here. I lean towards the Philadelphia Eagles in this matchup.
Yeah, I've never really liked the Texans this year, guys. I think I've said that a few times. It's all because of Bill O'Brien. I don't think much of him as a coach, but the bottom line is they've won 10 of their last 11 games after starting 0-3. Now, some of those wins were very fortunate, but you can't ignore a 10-1 run no matter how you get there.
Yeah, absolutely. And the Minnesota Vikings, they too came off the deck after losing out in Seattle. They fired the offensive coordinator. They were able to run the football, which is what head coach wanted to do, Mr. Zimmer. And now they stay in a dome. They go over to Detroit, John, to play the Lions. What's the Super Contest line for this one?
Minnesota, a 5.5-point road favorite, guys. And as much turmoil as Minnesota's had this year, if they win their last two games, they will be back in the playoffs.
And they close with Chicago. And if Chicago doesn't have much to play for, you wonder how many players will be rested. And we will finish out this segment with Aaron Rodgers and the Packers right now. He said he wants to play, and I would dare say that Mr. Philbin, who wants to coach next year, said, yeah, Aaron, let's do that. So they're in playing the New York Jets, John.
Well, I'm sure Philbin wants him in there, Brent, but if I owned the Packers or ran the Packers, I wouldn't want him in there. Either way, he says he's going to go. We made Green Bay a 2.5-point road favorite at the New York Jets.
Here's a little bit something to consider in this game, Brent. How long is he going to play? That's just something that you got to keep in the back of your mind if you're going to play this game on either side.
But well, Vinny, I understand what you're saying, but do you think if he plays at that point in time, he's going to play 4 quarters? I don't get.
I think it depends on how the game is going, but I mean, that's the wild card in this whole game.
That's fair.
John, run down through the numbers. I'm sure we've got fresh audience joining us here, especially VSiN 204. Might have missed some of the scores, and we start with a doubleheader on Saturday. These are the Super Contest static lines from the Westgate Superbook. John?
Yes, sir. We got the Thursday Night Football Saturday edition. Titans a 9.5-point favorite at home against the Redskins, and the Chargers laying 4.5 at home against the Ravens. Sunday morning, Dallas is a 7.5-point favorite at home against Tampa Bay. New England laying 13 at home to the Buffalo Bills. Atlanta, a 3.5-point favorite on the road. Carolina without Cam Newton there. Miami's a 4-point favorite at home against Jacksonville. The Colts, 9.5-point favorites at home against the New York Giants. The Eagles giving 2.5 in Philadelphia to the Houston Texans. The Vikings, a 5.5-point favorite on the road against the Detroit Lions. And Aaron Rodgers and Green Bay, 2.5-point favorites at the New York Jets.
All right, so there we have it. And we'll be right back with the rest of the Week 16 card with John Murray. VSiN.com, Sirius XM 204.
As you can tell, we're not quite done with the Super Contest just yet. More Murray and Musburger on the other side.
This is Inside the Numbers, the Pro Football Edition, the very best information from VSiN's hosts and guests on this week's biggest pro football games. You can listen to VSiN on Sirius XM Channel 204. Watch us online at VSiN.com and follow us on Twitter at VSiN Live.
best time to bet anything is if the time is right for you at the number that you see up there. Parlays and teasers take a little more explaining, so I would try to get to the window as soon as possible. I wouldn't wait to the end when you're in line and there's 10 people ahead of you, then get to the front and actually go through 3 or 4 or 5 parlays from 6 to 8 teamers. Teaser bets, be a little bit more careful with, only because if you cross key numbers there and you don't utilize it, you're just simply wasting your money. The parlays, like everything else, have been this way since the beginning of time. If you're looking to bet the favorites, you want to bet them early in the week because that's when the line will come out. 80% of the time, the games usually go up near the end of the week. So if you're looking to bet the underdog, I would suggest, this is not every time, but most of the time you'll find a better bargain for your bet at the plus side near the end of the week.
So there's a couple of schools of thought here. The first school of thought is that you're better off not placing a parlay or a teaser altogether and just sticking to singles, because that's where the optimal value can be found. But what's the fun in that? We all love to bet parlays and bet teasers. It makes it betting more fun, betting more exciting. So the optimal time to be placing a parlay or a teaser is when you see a line that might be a little bit stale, or a line that hasn't moved as quickly as it needs to catch up with the market, because that's when you're going to create the optimal value for yourself as a bettor or a punter.
When you look at parlays, sometimes it's hard enough just to pick one winner, let alone multiple winners. But I think if you like favorites, you want to bet early because you're afraid that number might start to go up a little bit. If you're going to bet underdogs, maybe you wait a little bit to see how high that number goes, maybe to create some value. I think you're looking at key numbers, too, if you like a certain team. If it goes beyond 3, maybe you like the underdog. Below 3, maybe you like the favorite. When it comes to teasers, a lot of times you're looking maybe to tease that favorite down, who's, say, a 6 or 7 point favorite, to maybe pick or actually getting a point or two. And if you like an underdog, again, you're looking at some of those key numbers where you could maybe get over that 3, over that 6, over 7, or over any key numbers to kind of create some value. Again, it's hard enough to pick one, but if you like multiple games, I think that's the best approach.
Welcome back to Inside the Numbers, where you get the best insight from VSiN's experts on this weekend's biggest pro football games.
Back to the Super Contest we go, and lines for a few of the more exciting matchups coming up later in the day on Sunday and Monday.
Week 16, the Super Contest winding down. No playoff games, over after 17 weeks. So the heat is on, and we're talking to one of the directors from the Westgate Superbook, John Murray, and we're going to the Bengals and the Browns. We're going to pick up with the Battle of Ohio, and I got a chance. I'm not going to believe this number. Go ahead, John.
The Cleveland Browns, a favorite here at the Superbook at the Westgate, guys, are an 8.5 point chalk.
It's a good thing
we're Cincinnati Bengals.
I'm glad we're sitting down.
Let's think about this, okay? Here we are. Did they go winless again last year, or did
no? They had
yes. No, they went winless.
Winless.
Well, 2 years ago they had one win.
They had one win, 2 wins.
Right.
Okay, wait. All
And
right.
it was on
Here
Christmas Eve.
Here we are. Okay. An 8.5 point favorite, Amal. What you say here, lad?
Well, look, the way they played the first time around, this is a revenge spot for Cincinnati. I would lean towards the underdog here. My big concern is Jeff Driscoll. I'm not a big fan of his as a starting quarterback, and I think it's going to be difficult for the Bengals to move the ball.
I can second that, having watched him throw footballs into the 8th story of a nearby hotel. Okay. John, let's go down to the lowly Arizona Cardinals. They're hosting the Los Angeles Rams. All of us are scratching our head about the Rams the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, and all of a sudden the Rams need to win out to secure a first-round bye, Brent. They got the Bears nipping at their heels. I like their chances on Sunday. They're a 14-point favorite on the road against the Arizona Cardinals.
Okay, 14, no surprise there. I would rate the Cardinals as the weakest team in the NFC. I don't think there's any question about that. Now, speaking of the Bears, John, they go into San Francisco, where once again Kyle Shanahan has the 49ers playing very competitively down the stretch. Go back and look at how they finished last year. Now, remember, they had Jimmy Garoppolo. They do not have Jimmy Garoppolo this year, but Nick Mullins shows a pulse. What do we have? Bears, 49ers.
The Bears a 4-point favorite on the road here, guys, and you just hit the nail on the head. The 49ers won as home dogs 2 weeks in a row against Denver and Seattle, looking to make it 3 in a row against Chicago this week. They're lowering their draft pick, fellas. I don't know if I like it.
Vinny, you say.
Dangerous spot here. Nick Mullen, nobody's really talking about Nick Mullen, Brent. I thought you hit on a key point. A year ago it was Jimmy Garoppolo, but this kid is he's doing a solid job. He's definitely giving them depth at that position for when Jimmy Garoppolo comes back. This is a dangerous spot for the Bears.
Okay. Meanwhile, the New Orleans Saints, coming off their non-covering Monday night performance, they host the Pittsburgh Steelers. Dangerous game in New Orleans. Super Contest line is what, John?
The Saints a 6-point favorite at home. The Saints haven't been at home in a while, guys. They've played a lot of road. I think 3 consecutive road games. This will probably be the most heavily bet Sunday game other than the Sunday night game, of course.
Amal?
I lean towards the Steelers here. John made a good point. This team has been away from home. They're averaging 38 points per game at home. And as good as they've been, I still think, though, that Pittsburgh offense in that controlled environment will be able to put up some points. I think it'll be a competitive football game.
All right, now we come to the big game of Sunday. The Kansas City Chiefs needing to finish strong because the Chargers are nipping at their heels in the AFC, and they go into a tough spot to play. They go into Seattle to play the Seahawks, John.
Yeah, Kansas City, a 2.5-point road favorite here, guys. There will be a lot of pressure on the Chiefs if the Chargers win on Saturday night.
Vinny?
Both teams are going to know where they stand, right, Brent? Because everybody that they're in contention with will have played already. So, but to John's point too, this will be the highest wagered game of the entire day. The Steelers Saints will be right behind it.
So both teams will still have to win, though, right, Amal? I mean, it isn't like they can rest guys if something happens earlier, correct?
No, not at all. And, to me, Brent, I like Seattle in this spot at home. One of the toughest home field advantages. This is a Seahawks team that's played extremely well, particularly at home. The other thing is, if you look at Kansas City, they've had 3 games now without Kareem Hunt. The number of rush yards they've had per game has slowly regressed. They've reduced in each one of the 3 games. I don't think it's going to be easy in this spot against Seattle. And also on the other side of that, we saw it in the Baltimore game. The Ravens were able to control the game in the second half with running the football. Seattle runs the ball more than any team in the NFL. We could see something similar in this matchup.
Okay, now we've got one game left on the card, John. That's the Monday night game. Christmas Eve, December 24th. We don't know yet whether this will be the Raiders' last game in the Oakland Coliseum. There's always a possibility of that. The lease has not been cut for next year, and they will be hosting the Denver Broncos Monday Night Football, John.
Denver, a 2.5-point favorite here, guys, but I got to think the Broncos are going to quit on Vance Joseph, lame duck coach Vance Joseph. I like the Raiders here. I'm not going to go with that, though, because I don't trust the Raiders' offensive linemen to block Von Miller and the sensational rookie Bradley Chubb of the Broncos.
Amal?
I tend to agree with John here. I'm not confident in taking the Raiders, but there's no way I can take Denver in this spot. They just don't have anything left to play for. Night before Christmas, you're playing a road game. A lot of times the effort tends to be lacking in those spots.
Nobody wants to get hurt in this game, right? That's what the effort part is. Listen, they're pros. I get it and everything, but
no, you're right, Vinny.
Yeah, I mean,
and we can't read the future with them. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, John, we picked up, I believe, with the Bengals and the Browns. I'll tell you what. Let's run through the whole card. We've got a fresh audience. Let's start with the 2 Saturday games and take everybody back through the lines again. Will you do that, please?
I can do that. Saturday afternoon, the Tennessee Titans are giving 9.5 points at home against the Washington Redskins. The night game, the Chargers, a 4.5-point favorite in L.A. against the Baltimore Ravens. Sunday morning, Dallas is a 7.5-point favorite at home against Tampa Bay Buccaneers. New England laying 13 points at home to the Buffalo Bills. Atlanta, a 3.5-point road favorite at Carolina. No Cam Newton there for the Panthers. The Dolphins are a 4-point favorite at home against the Jacksonville Jaguars. The Colts giving 9.5 in Indianapolis to the New York Giants. The Eagles, a 2.5-point favorite at home against the Houston Texans. The Vikings, a 5.5-point road favorite at the Detroit Lions. Green Bay, -2.5 on the road against the Jets. Aaron Rodgers expected to play there. Cleveland is an 8.5-point favorite at home against the Bengals. The Rams, a 2-touchdown favorite on the road against the Arizona Cardinals. Chicago Bears are a 4-point favorite at the San Francisco 49ers. The Saints, 6-point favorites at home against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Sunday Night Football, Kansas City giving 2.5 on the road against the Seattle Seahawks. And the Monday night game on Christmas Eve, the Christmas present from the NFL, Denver -2.5 at the Oakland Raiders. Should be a good one.
And, John, which of these games caused the most conversation, discussion, perhaps a different point of view when you guys put the contest line together?
Well, it would have to be the two games with the quarterback situations, Carolina, Atlanta, and Green Bay, New York Jets. I'd say the Green Bay game was the one that caused the most discussion. The debate between going with 2.5 and 3. 2.5, I think, is a better number there for the contest because I agree with Vinny. I don't know if we'll see a full 60 minutes of Aaron Rodgers. There's just no reason for Aaron Rodgers to be out there at all.
Okay, now, of course, for VSiN 1, the most important part of the half hour with our guy, Big John Murray. What pick are you giving us for this week? My leadoff pick, lad. What do you have?
You know, we talked about the Browns, but the 8.5 we determined was just too much. So we're going to go to the Saturday night game, and we're going to give you the Baltimore Ravens +4.5 at the Chargers. It's exactly the kind of spot where the Chargers always blow it. Everyone's going to be expecting them to win. They're at home. They're favored. I'll go with the Ravens and the 4.5 points in this one.
I think Amal would agree with you.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I reserve the right to veto.
Yes, it's your entry, and I know you're in the money. It's your entry.
You know, I have not vetoed one entry all year, but Jorge, the producer, came over at the first break. He said, "Hey, Brian, anything you like?" I said, "Yeah." I said, I'm leaning to the Chargers. I said, I agree with Amal that the Ravens would have a hard time playing catch-up. And the Chargers' best running back, in all likelihood, is going to be playing, and that's Gordon. He's had a couple of weeks off. And although 4.5 does scare me a little bit, so I will probably go with my guys from the Westgate because they've been on the money. They've kept me on the money so far, and I don't want to pretend that I'm too smart. You know what I mean, Vinny? Because I asked my two dogs to help me out when they go home too. You know,
we want to come through for you, Brent. I'm sorry. We want to come. The pressure is on. We know it. And please, you guys, tweet at Paul Howard and let him know that we gave the Ravens to Brent. He's very skeptical. He says we only talk about it after the fact. Well, it's Wednesday afternoon, and we're giving it to him right now.
I think, John, you've only given me one loser.
No.
Yeah, you backed up the Browns on me one week.
We've given you a few losers. And don't forget, last week Eric Osterman gave you the Colts, so Eric really deserves the credit for that one.
Yeah, tell Eric thanks, will you, my friend?
Make sure Eric gets the credit there, and then you can pin it on me if the Chargers blow out the Ravens. I'm okay with that.
Hey, listen, John, Merry Christmas to you and the guys over there. Okay. Brian Rogers, our fine executive producer, he said, Brent, you worked hard. Next week's Christmas, he said, maybe I'd take the whole week off before you go to Kansas City for the Raiders. Last game, I said, are you kidding me? I got to get the lines for week 17. I got to be in there on Wednesday. So I'll see you next week when we get the final contest lines, John. Thanks a lot, my friend.
Yes, sir. I'm going home on Sunday night, but I'm flying back here on Christmas night, and I'll be here Wednesday for week 17.
Outstanding. Okay, so there we have it.
When we come back, it's the game show sweeping the nation, at least in their minds. John Murray, JVT, and Sam play Guess the Closing Lines next.
This is Inside the Numbers, the Pro Football Edition, the very best information from VSiN's hosts and guests on this week's biggest pro football games. You can listen to VSiN on SiriusXM Channel 204. Watch us online at vsin.com and follow us on Twitter at VSiN Live.
If you didn't catch VSiN last week, here's some of what you missed.
But don't you guys agree, if there's ever going to be a run from a wild card again, it's going to be this year? Even though the Saints have been prolific offensively and what they've been able to do, have the largest point differential in the league, I think this is a wide-open tournament. Yeah. I think anybody could win it. It's not like some years where you go, wow, this team is so dominant that really nobody has a chance. They're almost playing for second place. I don't see it being that way this year. So if you're looking at maybe making a futures bet, Vinny mentioned the Colts. They're currently sitting at 40-1. Mm-hmm. Look, I don't think the Colts are going to get there, but it's not out of the realm of possibility just based on the way the offensive line has protected Andrew Luck.
What's the biggest future ticket you ever cashed or ticket you saw?
biggest one I've ever seen.
Yeah.
I mean, it would have to be this Vikings one. That this Vikings to make the playoffs. The guy bet 240,000 to win 120,000 at minus 200.
He's in trouble. He's got a serious
I don't think
sweat.
so.
Really?
I don't think so, Paul, because these other teams in the NFC, you look at Philadelphia, you look at Carolina, and certainly the Redskins, they're all falling apart around them. If you look at Minnesota's schedule down the stretch, they're a 7-point favorite against the Dolphins on Sunday. They're in Detroit next week. We have them as a 3.5-point favorite in that game. They play the Bears the last Sunday of the year. I think it's very likely that the Bears will be locked into their playoff seed in that game, and the Bears will have nothing to play for, and the Vikings will be a good-sized favorite in that game. Also consider this possibility. Consider the possibility that the Bears are locked into the number 3 seed, which is very likely. The Vikings would be playing for the number 6 seed, which would be a rematch against the Bears, and the Bears would likely play nobody and show nothing, knowing that they'd be playing the Vikings again the following week.
This guy, Hall of Fame, let's just not even debate this anymore. He never gets hurt. He's never had an offensive lineman of any repute in all his years. He shot puts the ball to wherever. That pass to Travis Benjamin on that 4th and 7 conversion on that final drive.
Oh my God.
I said earlier, you could have frozen the frame when he dropped back to pass, allowed Phillip, so everybody else is frozen, right? We'll just do this bizarro exercise. Phillip Rivers could have walked up to Benjamin, placed the ball in his hands, and walked back behind the line of scrimmage. He couldn't have done it any better.
And that's the throw I'm talking about that Trubisky can't make.
Welcome back to Inside the Numbers, where you get the best insight from VSiN's experts on this weekend's biggest pro football games.
All right, they take a swing at it every week on Between the Sidelines. The Westgate Superbook's John Murray joined JVT and Sam to guess where closing lines will settle come game time on Sunday.
The host chair, JVT, this is your thing. This is your segment, your skinny mic, your flower.
By the way, I may or may not have this as my ringtone in the next day.
You should.
Really?
Oh yeah, I can.
How do we get that?
I was gonna say I can make it happen.
That'd be great.
You should see the mood in the studio of everybody when that song comes on. People Rob starts dancing, putting his fingers up. Dez is like, dancing around. It's just great.
It makes up for a certain program not being on, Sam. My program.
Hey, wait,
no, I know it hasn't started yet.
Yeah, okay, I was gonna say.
Barb, I know.
Yeah.
I know what time it starts. Yeah. Come on, it's my favorite show.
First line.
Come on.
On Saturday, Washington Redskins at the Tennessee Titans, and the Titans are laying 10. Total is 37, but we don't care about the total. We just want to guess the closing line. JVT, Titans, Redskins, number 10 right now.
That's got to come under, right? I'm going to go can I go 8.5? I'll go 8.5. The Redskins actually pull it out over the weekend. Defensively, I don't think they're terrible. The Titans we've seen before at home, John, laying 9.5 or 10. It was the New York Jets. They barely get out of that game. I don't think anybody's confident to lay 10. I think this goes down.
Yeah, I'll say 9 here, guys. And you got to give the Redskins defense a lot of credit for Sunday. Jacksonville's only touchdown came on a very foolish decision by the Redskins to punt it right down the middle with about 10 seconds left in the first half. Jacksonville returned that punt for a touchdown. If the Redskins had just punted that ball out of bounds, the Jaguars wouldn't have scored a TD in that game.
Josh Johnson's the key to this offense, right?
I don't know about that, but he moved the chains a few times with his feet. The defense played great. And Jacksonville's just not a very good team.
And I think that's the key. I think that's why he's the better option than Sanchez, because of the mobility factor, because you can scheme differently. He can take broken plays, do something with them. He was clearly better than Sanchez.
He's a better option than Sanchez. I don't have much to add to that.
I will be taking 10, so I agree. I think it goes under.
You're a better option than Mark Sanchez.
No, not at my advanced age. No. Well, next game.
Chargers, Ravens in Los Angeles. This number across Vegas, 4.5. The Bolts are favored after being a dog on Thursday night and beating the Chiefs.
Yeah, this is a great game, really. I think this number is going to come down. The wise guys love to bet on the Chargers as a road dog. They love to fade them as a home favorite. I'll call it 3.5 here on the Ravens.
I was going to go 4, but that's I'll go 4 for or 3.5. One of the two. It's not going to go up. That's for sure.
How about 4? Call it 4.
I like it.
4 sounds good.
I don't feel like you're very confident in it, though.
No, I think people are going to bet the Ravens and John Harbaugh as a dog.
They will.
Yeah.
The sharp guys, they love to go against Rivers as a home favorite, and the Chargers are coming off of just a huge, huge win. But, if the Chargers win this game, guys, they're going to put a lot of pressure on Kansas City
in the Sunday night game in Seattle.
Yeah, that's right.
I want no part of Rivers as a favorite, though. I don't want to lay 4.5 with Rivers.
Think about the interception he threw at the end of the first half. And then think about the throw he made on 4th down to Benjamin on the winning drive. How can that be the same guy?
And they were down 14 with 7 minutes to go in the game.
That throw into the end zone was so bad. That was something
ridiculous.
That was something a college quarterback does, where he's like, you know what, screw it. I think you can come down with it, and just tried to throw it in there. I don't know what that was.
Think about that 4th down throw he made to Benjamin. I don't think there's any other QB in the league that can make that throw. That was a remarkable pass.
On to Sunday, Tampa Bay, Dallas, the Cowboys, the Westgate, 7 -120, South Point 7 flat, -110. I'm going to guess this one goes up a bit because Tampa is just awful.
And I'm with you, Sammy. I'll call it 7.5. I think that the Cowboys Indianapolis got the Cowboys' attention on Sunday. You know, the Cowboys basically wrapped up the NFC East by beating Philadelphia, but they do have a little bit of work to do here down the stretch. They're going to take care of business against the Bucs.
I call it 7. Tampa Bay has covered 3 out of 4 games, Sam. They are not a good team, but they have been covering numbers as of late.
I had 8. I had +8. I didn't wait for 8.5 in the last game, and they lose, of course, 8. So I got to push in that one. Patriots and Bills, oh boy, 12.5 South Point, 13 Westgate. Where does this one close, JVT?
This has got to come down, right? Like, this can't go up. Like, we've seen this Patriots team strong. I get that it's been on the road, but the Bills have been great defensively all year long. Josh Allen makes them much more competitive. It's a huge number with a team that hasn't been covering. I got to think this goes down like 12. I'll call it like 11.5, maybe even 10.5, something.
I'll go with Johnny. I'll say 11.5 too. And you know, Josh Allen has added another element to Buffalo's offense with his feet. The Bills' defense has been very impressive. I've been saying this all year, as you guys know. New England is just not that good. Yep. They don't have nearly the roster talent of some of the other top AFC contenders. They just have Belichick and Brady, so everyone assumes that they're good.
Our friend Adam Hill at the RJ has been saying all year that Josh Allen is the player in the league.
The worst player in the league. That is a little extreme. Allen has a lot of accuracy issues, but he can run the ball. He's got a huge arm. Let's keep in mind that he's 22 years old, Sam, and he's not exactly playing on the most talented offense in football.
Deshaun Kaiser is still in the league.
I was going to the guy we spoke about, Mark Sanchez.
Like Dan Bailey, I think.
Yeah, there's a lot of players who are a lot worse.
There's some players out there. Josh Allen is Buffalo's option at quarter. I think he gives him a bright future.
I say, when you watch, there's no denying the ceiling that it has. With his athleticism, if you corral that arm of his and make him into a decent and accurate passer, they have a pretty good quarterback on their hands if they can actually do that.
Yeah, and no one, I don't remember anyone saying during the draft process, watch out for this kid's feet. This kid can run the ball. I never heard anyone say that.
The closest it was is like he'd be a tight end if he were, but not to this level. Like regularly running for like 100 yards. It was nothing like this.
He's got to work on his accuracy, all kidding aside. We all know that. But there's a lot there. I think he's just scratching the surface. You know, these quarterbacks, these young quarterbacks, all about being in the right system. We're seeing that right now with Baker Mayfield clicking in that new Browns offense. If Allen can get into the right scheme, I think he could be very good.
This one's interesting. Atlanta and Carolina, you have a couple things sort of working against each other. The Panthers looked awful. Their season essentially over. And Cam Newton, we all watched the game. He looks like he's hurt. So people know that. And they've also watched the Falcons put 40 on the Cardinals. So I think a couple of those things are playing into this line move. Opened at 3, and now the South Point and Westgate both have 2.5, guys.
You know, Sammy, we talked when we did the show on Sunday night about why should the Packers play Aaron Rodgers the last 2 weeks. Yep. I'll say the same exact thing about Carolina. What is the point of trotting out? I agree with you completely that Newton's hurt right now. They're not going anywhere. Why should they play him the last 2 weeks? I won't be surprised if Atlanta goes off favorite in this game.
So I was going to say, I think if Flip's favorite is going to be the Atlanta Falcons by the time we reach game time. Like 2.5 at the best, right? Atlanta?
Yeah. And I don't see why, if you're out of the playoff race and you've got a guy that's your franchise quarterback, you're paying him all this money. What's the point of trotting him out there for the last 2 weeks?
Jacksonville goes to South Beach to take on the Miami Dolphins. Can't wait for this one on Sunday. Dolphins laying 4.5. Westgate has 4, so we're already seeing money coming in on the dog.
Dude,
Dolphins are tough at home, boys.
Yeah, I mean, they do play better at home, and they did get back into it against the Minnesota Vikings for a bit, but they couldn't protect him, or they couldn't protect Tannehill at all, and I think that's what worries me when you look at this game. Regardless, I'll call it. I think it's just this 4.5. I'll go Dolphins -1.
I'll say Dolphins 5, and I'm kicking myself, John, because I've said all year that I think the Dolphins suck.
Yeah.
And instead of dying on that hill, I finally gave them praise last week after the New England win. and then they just went out and did that. I should have just stuck to my guns.
Now, they're awful on the road. They're 2-5 ATS on the road, and they could lose by 40 on the road.
I think they're 1-6 straight up, too. I think they've lost 6 straight.
2-5 ATS on the road. At home, second best team in the league, 6-1 ATS.
Boom.
And there's just some crazy wins. I know we've talked about, obviously, the New England game. Don't forget the Chicago game.
Yep.
They've had some crazy wins there in Miami.
This one will go down. I'll leave this one off. Indianapolis and the New York Giants. This number 9.5. This will certainly go down. There are these factions that just keep betting on the Giants this year. It'll continue in Week 16.
I'll say 8.5. I think that you're right on the money there, Sam. I saw some reports that Eli Manning is going to be coming back as the Giants quarterback in 2019.
Come on.
If you're a Giants fan, you cannot be happy to read that, Johnny.
No, of course. You're very happy. He's playing so well, John.
Oh, yeah. No, he looks very good. You know, the Giants have a ton of talent on offense. The NFC East is nothing special. I think if they could move to a new quarterback, they could be in the playoffs next season. There's no reason why not.
He's going to be in a walker soon.
It's just ridiculous. It's a ridiculous decision.
Pretty soon it's going to be just shotgun because he can't, like Peyton Manning at the end of his career where they would do primarily shotgun because his foot was so banged up he couldn't drop back.
Yeah, it might roll an ankle or something. Hut.
I'll go. I think like regardless of how the Colts have been, especially at the Colts have been when they play at home. But I'll go. I think this goes down because if especially Beckham Jr. is ruled back in, I'll call 8.5. 8. That's what it's going to end.
On the opening line on Sunday, Houston opened 3.5 favorite. Now remember, this for the Eagles beat the Rams as a 5.50 Donnie line. So the Eagles are laying half. Westgate had 2. Will it keep climbing?
I think time we just thought that the lose Rams. They were 100.
Everybody did.
And then would have been over. And now it's different. This is a critical game. Huge chance to get a bye. He's got a chance to get that number lead. I think the Eagles was more like 2.5 in this.
Yep, I would agree. And but 2, we talked earlier in the show. Texans ceiling by week, floor seed. Oh. Yep, this because the Colts are still alive. Texans lose, Colts win out. See South champions, the Indianapolis.
That was some performance. Rams Sunday Night Football. I mean, Jared Goff, he was missing throws. He was just every time early in the year. And the Rams and the both look like peaked a little early. Something wrong with with both of their quarterbacks, and the NFC playoff race is wide open right now.
Minnesota, Detroit. The game is in the Motor City. This line opened up 5.5, hasn't really budged. Vikings minus 5.5 on the road in Detroit.
I'll go first. I'll call this 6.5, John. I think it goes up.
I agree with you. I'll say 6 or 6.5 as well. And at the Westgate Superbook, guys, we'll be watching this game closely. We need the Lions to beat the Vikings because if they don't, Minnesota should be a pretty good-sized favorite next week against the Bears. The Bears likely will have nothing to play for in that game, although they could theoretically still get a first-round bye.
What you need is Matthew Stafford to be down 10 in the fourth quarter, and then maybe Detroit will win that game.
We'll hope for that.
There's where he loves to be, John. He loves to be down 10 or down 6 late in the fourth, and he loves to be the hero.
I needed the Lions to win this past Sunday. I've got Buffalo under 6 wins. The Lions really let me down. They played for the field goal.
Oh, Matt Prater. Yeah,
you don't play for the field goal. That's for losers. You know that.
You've been trying to tell people
I've been trying. I'm trying to get that message out to them.
Hey, so we haven't had – well, we can talk about it too. I mean, talk about Denver over the weekend.
Yeah, I don't know how.
Picking for losing.
Humans is so pissed. He's got over 7 with Denver. And there have been 2 or 3 games that Vance Joseph is completely fudged.
They kicked a field goal down by 4 inside the 5-yard line.
On 4th and 1.
That's not even real.
And they were a 4th and 1 away from never seeing the ball again,
That cannot happen. That cannot happen.
I said this yesterday. If I was Elway, I would have had a crane come into the stadium and just picked him up on the sideline and
just send a message down. Mr. Joseph, we need you to leave the stadium right now.
Next up, Follow the Money takes a peek at Week 17.
This is Inside the Numbers, the Pro Football Edition, the very best information from VSiN's hosts and guests on this week's biggest pro football games. You can listen to VSiN on SiriusXM Channel 204. Watch us online at vsin.com and follow us on Twitter at VSiN Live.
Well, the best time to bet anything is if the time is right for you at the number that you see up there. Parlays and teasers take a little more explaining, so I would try to get to the window as soon as possible. I wouldn't wait to the end when you're in line and there's 10 people ahead of you, then get to the front and actually go through 3 or 4 or 5 parlays from 6 to 8 teamers. Teaser bets, be a little bit more careful with, only because if you cross key numbers there and you don't utilize it, you're just simply wasting your money. The parlays, like everything else, have been this way since the beginning of time. If you're looking to bet the favorites, you want to bet them early in the week because that's when the line will come out. 80% of the time, the games usually go up near the end of the week. So if you're looking to bet the underdog, I would suggest, this is not every time, but most of the time you'll find a better bargain for your bet at the plus side near the end of the week.
So there's a couple of schools of thought here. The first school of thought is that you're better off not placing a parlay or a teaser altogether and just sticking to singles, because that's where the optimal value can be found. But what's the fun in that? We all love to bet parlays and bet teasers. It makes it betting more fun, betting more exciting. So the optimal time to be placing a parlay or a teaser is when you see a line that might be a little bit stale, or a line that hasn't moved as quickly as it needs to catch up with the market, because that's when you're going to create the optimal value for yourself as a bettor or a punter.
When you look at parlays, sometimes it's hard enough just to pick one winner, let alone multiple winners. But I think if you like favorites, you want to bet early because you're afraid that number might start to go up a little bit. If you're going to bet underdogs, maybe you wait a little bit to see how high that number goes, maybe to create some value. I think you're looking at key numbers, too, if you like a certain team. If it goes beyond 3, maybe you like the underdog. Below 3, maybe you like the favorite. When it comes to teasers, a lot of times you're looking maybe to tease that favorite down, who's, say, a 6 or 7 point favorite, to maybe pick or actually getting a point or two. And if you like an underdog, again, you're looking at some of those key numbers where you could maybe get over that 3, over that 6, over 7, or over any key numbers to kind of create some value. Again, it's hard enough to pick one, but if you like multiple games, I think that's the best approach.
Welcome back to Inside the Numbers, where you get the best insight from VSiN's experts on this weekend's biggest pro football games.
We're not just worried about this week's games on Inside the Numbers. Follow the Money checks out next week's NFL matchups and talks some potential value.
Week 17 numbers, National Football League, courtesy of Superbook USA. You pointed this out earlier in the program.
Well, right off the bat, here's your big boy. Go bet the Giants. They're telling you Dallas is going to sit everybody, and they will. Now, Dallas has got to beat Tampa Bay, but I think they will, or get a Tennessee win and a Houston win. Cowboys win, they wrap up the division, they'll sit everybody. And that's where you got to take the Giants against the backups.
Yeah, they're laying 2.5 right now.
That's all you need to know. Giants favorite.
Who's going to play in that game for the Giants? I don't know. But yeah, as you said, Beckham said him this week again. We'll see what they're actually going to do with him. This crap that they want Eli to maybe come back next year. Watch what's going to happen. He'll play well against the Cowboys. Dallas won't play anybody. He'll put up decent numbers. He'll score a lot of points, and people are going to say, see, we got to bring him back in a game that doesn't matter for Dallas whatsoever.
Now, this is too low. Chiefs are 13.5 against the Raiders. They're going to need that game. I'm sorry. They're going to. What happened a couple weeks ago, I know it was a struggle. Oh, man. At home, Raiders coming off what should be an emotional Monday night in the final game in Oakland, short week. They'll have the U-Haul backed up, as Deion Sanders likes to say. Those tee times are already booked. Chiefs should bury them in that game. Absolutely.
Well, this is where you got to get ahead of it, right?
Take out their frustration, yeah.
You got to predict what's going to happen this weekend, though, where this number's going to go.
Well, they'll still need it, though. Yeah, they'll still need the game.
If the Chargers lose?
Well, I guess, that could happen.
Sure.
Yeah, Chargers lose, Chiefs win. But
do they want to sit their guys for 2 full weeks then?
Yes.
Right?
I would not do that. That's
Neither
a bad move.
I hate that
bad
idea.
move.
Yep. Get, Chad Henne some playing time here? I believe the backup for KC. What is Mahomes worth to the number, by the way? It's got to be.
Good one.
Yeah. Panthers at the Saints. What's that going to mean for the Saints? They're 5.5 in this game.
Well, if they have
home field wrapped up.
They'd have to lose. Right. They'd have to lose. We'll see what Peyton does. You know, Carroll's a lunatic. Carroll plays guys and still tries to win in meaningless games. If the Saints win Sunday, they're the 1 seed. How will Peyton treat that Week 17? And Carolina's a mess, but I can't lay 5.5 there. It comes down to Teddy Bridgewater against maybe the starters.
Right. Well, again, on Carolina's side, do they actually trot Cam Newton out there in Week 17, completely out of the race? Or, do they want to play spoiler role against a team in their own division? Jets at the Patriots, New England's lane 13.
Yep, and they're going to need that too.
They will, yes.
Jets could have the U-Haul backed up in that one too.
How about Eagles 5.5 at the Redskins?
Yeah, Johnson was okay. I know he did more just scrambling, and they didn't do much on offense, but not bad. Got the win on the road, okay. But the Eagles should bury him. If they need it, though. How do they, both teams could be out of it. How do they treat that?
Well, see, this is already priced like, okay, Eagles could win this week against the Texans. They are saying right now, basically, the Redskins, they're 10-point dogs this week against Tennessee. They're going to get buried there, and then they have nothing to play for then in week number 17. That's why that number is. What if Washington? And by the way, isn't that
What's
number?
Peterson going to care? I guess maybe Peterson will try to, let's get to 500 or let's close strong here. I don't know. How will he treat it? He'll probably, I don't know. That's a tough call. I guess Eagles are pass.
Yeah. Well, the Tennessee game this weekend against Washington is telling you that Tennessee needs the game. So that's why they're laying 10 points in the contest. I mean, that seems like quite a bit to me. Elsewhere in the NFL, Week 17, Jags at the Texans. Houston's laying 7.5.
Well, they're going to need it too.
Yeah. Who's going to be playing for Jacksonville?
They still haven't clinched the division, and Jacksonville just can't do a damn thing on offense. Now you're going against that ferocious pass rush, and what? How are they going to score in that game? No, they have no debate. Jacksonville's given up. They gave up months ago.
That's what I'm saying. Like, why? Who are they actually going to play in Week 17? Fournette had 1 carry in the second half against Washington. Now that was the game plan.
Right.
Sure. This game's awesome. Browns at the Ravens. And I'll tell you this, with that lunatic as the head coach, Craig Williams, this team's not going to tap out. There's no way. And they're catching 4.5 against Baltimore on the road.
Yep. That could be for the Ravens' win total. Everything come down to that. If they can't beat the Chargers Saturday night, that is a good game. Big time. You're right. And Williams trying to get this job, see if they can close strong. That could be, would they be trying to, win 6 out of 7?
Yeah.
If they beat the Bengals.
I would go with Cleveland right now, plus 4.5 points. Atlanta, -3 at Tampa Bay. Completely, that's going to be for draft position, basically, Week 17. Tampa Bay has been...
No opinion.
They've been in these games. That's the weird thing. They were in the game last week against Baltimore. They were in the game against the Saints. They're catching 7. They're probably going to be in this game against the Cowboys somehow. Dolphins at the Bills. Buffalo is laying 3. Now, this could, because that win total moved so much that I think it actually came down to 5.5 at some spots. I know Matt Humans he's convinced he's going to get a push. He got 6. I think that was his biggest bet of the year on a win total. Buffalo under 6. 3-point favorites at home against Miami.
Yeah, I don't trust Miami on the road. Not to mention you're going into probably 10-degree weather in that game.
And a crowd that's going to be lubed up. Yep. They're going to be the pregame for New Year's Eve is going to be going on for like 72 hours in Buffalo. They're going to be maniacs probably. Colts, here you go. This will be hopefully this is the flex game on Sunday night. And Indy is laying 2.5 at Tennessee.
Yep, should be. Can't wait. This should be the playoffs. Will start a week early. Need a Tennessee, and Tennessee's laying 10. Colts are laying 9, and you need a Baltimore loss Saturday night in L.A. That means this is for all the marbles. Winner's in, loser goes home. Playoffs start a week early Sunday night. Michaels and Collinsworth, Christmas. What a Christmas present for NBC.
And I know people are going to say, well, home dog, going to have to go with that. Are you? Really? Andrew Luck has never lost to the Titans.
Yeah.
And look what happened. I know they just played. They killed them. And you can say, well, Seattle just played San Francisco, and they killed them. They got beat in the rematch. He's never lost to this team. It's night and day when they play. Bengals at Pittsburgh. Steelers laying 13 in the game there. Bears at the Vikings. Minnesota 6.5.
That looks easy. When the janitor broke it down last week, Bears don't play anybody, don't show anything. Vikings need it to get in the playoffs, and they meet the following week in the 3-6 game. I think the Vikings would kill them.
Think the Lions show up this week against Minnesota?
Yeah, probably. It's more about Minnesota's struggled all season. I mean, finally get the offensive coordinator, DiFilippo, out of there. They looked good last week, but...
That, to me, is going to be the game where Stafford's going to be down the entire time. And somehow it's going to be, well, they have the ball, 2 minutes and change to go, and it's going to be like if they score, he'll cover the game.
It'll be I don't see the Vikings blowing them out. But that they should be able to handle the Bears Week 17. Chargers 5.5 in Denver. See what that means for the Chargers if they need that. And that's now Denver, especially if they lose Monday night. Just come limping in, get the season over with. We know we got a lame duck coach. And I would lay it with Seattle. 10.5 against Arizona. We're foregone conclusion now. Wilkes is gone in Arizona. That's it, according to the local scribes back there. And then the Rams 9 against the 49ers. Maybe it doesn't mean anything. Who knows?
I hope that game actually means something for Seattle at home. If it does, if they have to get that game to stay alive and get in, laying 10.5.
Oh, they'll kill them.
That number will go to 14 probably,
Yes.
and it'll be a complete bloodbath in Seattle. They'll do whatever they want. They will run for 300 yards in that game. It's going to be Carson and Davis and Penny if they're all healthy, and Wilson going completely ballistic against a really bad Arizona team. Can you believe that with Wilkes, though? 1 year, one and done. What's the point, by the way, of giving new coaches, right, they've never done it before, why give them a 4-year contract?
Yeah,
Why?
it's happened. Chudzinski was one and done. Chip Kelly and Tom Sula one and done. The same organization did it back-to-back years.
Yeah.
I know. It was crazy. I'll tell you, everyone will have these on teasers, though. Vikings, Seahawks, Chargers, especially the Texans. Everyone will have all those on teasers.
Yeah. Eagles, if they have, if there's still a chance for them to get in.
I like the correlated parlay angle, too. Remember the year, I think it was Trent Green. The Chiefs had like a 5% chance, and they got in. Like, big upsets had to happen, and it all happened. Cutler and the Broncos lost at home. It was a big upsets, and they won. So that you do these correlated parlays about A, B, and C has to happen for this team to get in. And you just see the money line return. So don't do stuff like that. That's fun.
That's our show for this week. We hope you enjoyed it. Until next time, I'm Kelly Bidlin reminding you of the most important rule come Sunday. Cash and tickets is what it's all about.
This is Inside the Numbers, the Pro Football Edition, the very best information from VSiN's hosts and guests on this week's biggest pro football games. You can listen to VSiN on SiriusXM Channel 204. Watch us online at vsin.com and follow us on Twitter at VSiN Live.
If you didn't catch VSiN last week, here's some of what you missed.
But don't you guys agree, if there's ever going to be a run from a wild card again, it's going to be this year? Even though the Saints have been prolific offensively and what they've been able to do, have the largest point differential in the league, I think this is a wide open tournament. I think anybody could win it. It's not like some years where you go, wow, this team is so dominant that really nobody has a chance. They're almost playing for second place. I don't see it being that way this year. So if you're looking at maybe making a futures bet, Vinny mentioned the Colts. They're currently sitting at 40-1. Look, I don't think the Colts are going to get there, but it's not out of the realm of possibility just based on the way the offensive line has protected Andrew Luck.
What's the biggest future ticket you ever cashed or ticket you saw?
Biggest one I've ever seen?
Yeah.
I mean, it would have to be this Vikings one, that this Vikings to make the playoffs. The guy bet $240,000 to win $120,000 at minus 200.
Oh, man.
He's in trouble. He's got a serious
I don't think
sweat.
so.
Really?
I don't think so, Paul, because these other teams in the NFC, you look at Philadelphia, you look at Carolina, and certainly the Redskins, they're all falling apart around them. If you look at Minnesota's schedule down the stretch, they're a 7-point favorite against the Dolphins on Sunday. They're in Detroit next week. We have them as a 3.5-point favorite in that game. They play the Bears the last Sunday of the year. I think it's very likely that the Bears will be locked into their playoff seed in that game, and the Bears will have nothing to play for, and the Vikings will be a good-sized favorite in that game. Also consider this possibility. Consider the possibility that the Bears are locked into the number 3 seed, which is very likely. The Vikings would be playing for the number 6 seed, which would be a rematch against the Bears, and the Bears would likely play nobody and show nothing, knowing that they'd be playing the Vikings again the following week.
This guy, Hall of Fame, let's just not even debate this anymore. He never gets hurt. He's never had an offensive lineman of any repute in all his years. He shot puts the ball to wherever. That pass to Travis Benjamin on that 4th and 7 conversion on that final drive.
Oh my God.
I said earlier, you could have frozen the frame when he dropped back to pass, allowed Phillip, so everybody else is frozen, right? We'll just do this bizarro exercise. Phillip Rivers could have walked up to Benjamin, placed the ball in his hands, and walked back behind the line of scrimmage. He couldn't have done it any better.
And that's the throw I'm talking about that Trubisky can't make.
It definitely is harder to handicap a mismatch. I mean, you think about a team like an Alabama playing the Citadel or a team like that. I mean, what's the difference between 39 and 49 points at the end of the day? Whereas a team that's a lot closer, it's going to come down many times, more than not, to a last-second drive. So those games that are those huge mismatches where it could be anywhere between 30 and 45 or even more points become much more difficult to handicap.